Hey everyone, welcome back to the Creative Tavern. My name is Christopher Lee. I am concept artist. Been in industry for about 10 years now. Worked with companies such as Walt Disney Imagineering as well as Universal Studios Creative. And I'm here today with my buddy Michael. Excuse me guys, I'm a little bit sick today. So, Michael.
Doing great, Chris.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Michael Welker. I'm a creative technologist and writer, and former creative producer in the theme park industry, which is where I met and got to work with Chris on several big theme park projects. But recently found ourselves in between big projects and said, hey, why don't we do something creative together? So we put our heads together and took a long time, about 6 months, to figure out what we wanted to do. Then decided, hey, let's learn how to make a video game. Neither of us have ever done that before, but it could be cool. And how hard could it be?
Yeah.
Um, 6 grueling months later, we completed and released our video game prototype for Project Rail Shooter. And we've got there are on our YouTube channel. We've archived all the design meetings where we went through making the making of that game. But it's available if you want to play the game. It's available for PC only. Sorry, Mac users. But you can check the game out. And not only did we make a video game, but we also wanted to give other people a window into our creative process and start building a community of other like creative-minded folks, because that was something
Mm.
both Chris and I missed a lot from working on big theme park projects. So that's how the Creative Tavern was born. And to tell you more
Mm.
about that, I'm handing it back to Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. And the Creative Taverns was, created for creative-minded people, just like Michael said. It's for Michael, myself, and for you, and for, not just creative people. Non-creative people is most definitely welcome in here too, just to give you guys a window into our world as to how we make stuff, like the Project Rail Shooter. We essentially started that game project from the scratch, like, doing thumbnails and all the way to like in the whole, game. And it was a lot of fun. And we thank you guys for, especially to Captain Blue Blue who's, watching and, you know, uh, and giving us advice and everything. So thank you so much. And King Cass, and Cyborg Zoth, hello man. Shout out to you guys. Welcome to the channel. And for people like everyone here, is we just want to be have a platform where everyone who can congregate together and just share each other's creative work. And every Sunday, if you did join our Discord and if you upload your stuff, we will take a look at your amazing work. And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be like a drawing. It could be a painting. It could be model making. It could be you know I don't know, like storytelling, anything at all you guys want to share. We take a look at it every Sunday. So yeah, welcome. Very, very happy to have you guys in here, and hopefully you guys are having a wonderful week and staying healthy and safe, and don't be like me. Do not catch the COVID. The COVID sucks. Yeah. But yes. Michael, did I miss anything?
Um, I don't think so. Yeah, I think you covered basically everything. The creative project that we were working on for 6 months has been completed, and since then, Chris and I have been kind of taking a break, which we recommend you do too.
Oh,
Uh, Even like little breaks throughout the day while you're working on something that's very mentally or creatively demanding, but also, when you complete a nice big project, it's good to take some time to step back and
hmm
let your creative soul recover a little bit to rest and recharge, get ready for the next thing. And what we decided to do for fun in that rest period is Chris and I both really like MCU, the MCU movies, the Marvel films. And so we said, hey, let's do a tier list, a ranking of all those movies, and we'll talk about them. And so each episode we've kind of been doing that, and that's what we're going to do today.
yeah.
Um, However, before we get started, there's one thing that I wanted to share, a personal milestone that I finally achieved. I'd really been sitting on my ass, um, dragging my feet, not getting this done, but I finally got it taken care of today. So I'm going to share my screen with you, Chris, and show you this thing that I've got. Bam.
Oh, whoa!
I did it.
Congratulations!
I got my
That
Harvard CS50 certificate.
ah.
For those that don't know, Harvard has a a computer science program. It's like an introductory computer science program for all their incoming students and people who are either majoring in computer science or who are just kind of interested in computer science. But it gives you this sort of like base foundation of how computer programming works. It's
Nice.
really difficult. But it's really rewarding, and the production is just fantastic. The film crew that they use is amazing. The lecturer David Malin is phenomenal. Like he's so good. He's one of the best professors I've ever had. Um, and the cool thing is uh, so this class gets offered every year on Harvard campus for on-campus students, but because they record it, they also post it online, and there's this entire program that you can take virtually. And if you go and as you do it, you like watch the lectures and you do the problem sets where you're actually coding programs and you're submitting them to their system. The system will then grade it and tell you, you know, here's your score. And if
Nice.
you do all the assignments and then also do a final project, you get to complete the course, and they give you this lovely little certificate here that says like, "Hey, you did it. You completed Harvard CS50." Um, so I did the entire course while we were making the rail shooter game, and I submitted the rail shooter as my final project today and got my certificate. So did it.
That's awesome. By the
Finished it
way,
out.
Cyborg Zlot says congratulations, Michael,
Yeah, thank you.
and also thank you so much. I hope to get a speedy recovery as well. Thank you, Cyborg. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
But congratulations, Michael. Wow, you got this fairly quickly.
Yeah, I thought it was going to take a couple of days, but as soon as I uploaded my stuff, it was like, bam, here you go. So
Yeah.
there you go. And
Did they?
the
Did,
best part, it's free. Like if anybody out there is interested in doing computer science or like making a career change, or you're just you want to learn the basics of computer programming, I
yeah.
can't recommend it enough. It's really hard, um, but it's doable. I did
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and
Nice.
yeah, it's all free.
Oh man, congratulations. And did they have any feedback input on based on our project?
Uh, Not yet. I think what they do is their system has like an automated assessment of the project to make sure that it
Mm.
meets their requirements, but then it goes into like their staff does like audits on submissions. So when that happens,
Oh.
we might get some feedback on it. But the cool
Oh.
thing is, I included as part of the final submission, you have to include a 3-minute video on like, hey, here's what the project is, and blah 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 blah. So I did a little 3-minute video for that. So and they'll share that with other, either students who are taking the course or people who are interested in the course and want to see other projects. So we might get a little bit of exposure that way. They might actually,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, share Project Rail Shooter on a future CS50, project showcase or something.
Yeah, that's awesome. They'd be like, and these two guys just, they're just doing it out from their house, every single week, and they have a YouTube channel and they documented their progress and, it's kind of
Exactly.
it's a little bit shitty the way they recorded it, but they still did it, It's like, yeah,
Yeah, I mean
yeah,
that's the important part is like, giving people access to be able to see like, here it is, man. This is the
yeah, yeah.
step-by-step thing. Like all like, you go to episode 13 and know that like we had no idea what was going to happen episodes
Right,
14 to 50.
right.
But that's where we were at that time. So you can like, I don't know. I'm hoping that it will give people some confidence in what it's really like to make something like that, as opposed to this sort of like the highlights version of,
Right.
you when you see like the making of a movie, right? And it's like a 20-30 minute little thing, and it seems like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, that, all right, but it doesn't really convey the like hundreds of people working for years and thousands of man hours
Yeah,
working on a
yeah.
thing. um and yeah, I think you know uh, it's obvious. It's not, I'm sure it's not the most riveting material, but for the creatively minded person out there who needs that shot in the arm, needs that sort of social proof of like, you know what, these guys did it, and here is exactly how they did it all along the way. I can do it too. Um, that's my hope. And yeah,
Yeah.
in my little 3 minute video, I mentioned all of that. I was like, hey, and not only did we make this game, but we recorded ourselves doing it. We documented the whole process. There's a link in the description to that playlist. So
That's cool. That's so
hopefully that'll
cool.
help people.
I would love to check out that 3 minute video in the near future, man.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. And yeah, what you were saying about the whole behind the scenes documentary of like, movies being made and everything. I always think of like, like when we're back at Imaginary, when we watch like, oh, this is the way we did it and here's the behind the scenes, and I'm just like, that's so bullshit. It's like
Yeah,
you
it's the
guys make
sexy
it.
version.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a dreamy, magical. Everything is going according to plan. It was all our what is it? It's all in the plan all
Magic and
along.
fairy dust. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Just get
whatever
out
we
our
wanted.
magical wand and
Yeah. Yeah.
ta-da,
And
Indiana Jones.
exactly. And nope, I trust me, there's a lot of like back and forth, there's a lot of doubt, there's a lot of bickering, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration, confusion. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on that I'm sure like a lot of institutions will not show you like, but the way we did it, we basically showed it like, well, this is hard, how the hell am I supposed to do this?
Yeah.
It's like, oh god, this is so annoying, I don't want to do texturing, I don't want to do this and do that, but there's no getting around it, right? You just gotta do it. I mean, it's true, if Michael and I can do it, you can do it too, but at the same time, it takes a lot of willpower and dedication. I mean, you can do it. You just gotta do it, and there
Yeah.
will be times when it's like, oh, I suck, or what's the point of this, and why are we doing
Mhm.
this? Is anyone ever gonna play it? And all these like doubts and thoughts that goes into the head, and it's you need a lot of self-will and determination in order to just plow through all that, negativity. And it was a lot of work, but at the same time, I mean, just seeing that on screen is all worth it, dude. Just get that freaking program and, a certificate. So that's awesome. Correct. Congratulations again, Michael.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm very, very proud of that. I'm so glad I
Nice.
finally got it.
Nice, nice. And also, I know you said that you were going to share on stream. You said that your 1 week of break turned into like a 1 month of a break, and
Hmm.
and uh and did you want to expound on that, or are you good?
I mean, was there something in particular you were curious about, or did I say something that I'd like tease, like, oh hey, I've
Yeah,
got
yeah,
something to tell you.
yeah. I was like, oh,
Um,
oh, something cool. But if
well,
not,
I,
then
I
that I'm
the thing that I definitely wanted to share with you guys was the Harvard certificate. So,
okay.
so it
Was that it?
might have been that.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice, 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 nice.
the break thing, like I had originally planned because we completed Project Rail Shooter on September 30th, and then I was like, okay, whew, I'm exhausted. That was really hard, especially at the end. I
Yeah.
mean, gosh, like you wouldn't, maybe you wouldn't know it, but like 2 or 3 days before the game released, like there wasn't even any music or sound effects in the game. Like all of that went in at the very last second.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine it without some of those sound effects and especially the music. Oh my God. And we already knew this going in, but like the music,
Yeah.
man,
Makes a huge
really makes it so
difference.
much better.
Huge
Um,
difference.
but anyway, we completed on September 30th, and my plan was to take just like a week of vacation to just like rest, but that ended up ballooning into like a whole month,
Mm.
um, which, yeah, I mean, I needed apparently. I So yeah, I got caught up on a lot of Netflix shows, Stranger Things and The Witcher, and finally watched Squid Game,
I
Arcane.
I
Holy
still
crap,
gotta watch all
Arcane is
those.
amazing.
Yeah, I still
Yeah,
gotta watch
they're
that.
I recommend all of them. I think they're
Yeah.
all quite good. Um, but yeah, so now, October's over and I'm ready to get back to work and to do some creative stuff, to do some technical stuff, and see what happens from here. So,
Yeah, yeah. I would love to get a update on, all the next steps of Michael Welker, like what is your next project, right? But
Got
we
things
could
cooking.
talk about that later. Yeah. Good, good, good.
Alrighty. So are you ready to start talking MCU, Chris?
Yeah, yes I am. Yes I am. Sorry, I was
Excellent.
muted a little bit. All right.
No
So
problem.
let me share my screen. The first movie we will talk about tonight is, oops, not that. What? Every single
Oh
time.
wow.
Yeah, every single time.
That's a great poster. I wish Captain Blue was here so he could rate this poster, but I think he
Oh,
would
I
rate
know.
this one pretty highly.
Oh, what's going on? Every single time.
Man, I
I
really like this poster. I like this poster more than the movie. Um, this
There you
poster reminds me a lot of I mean, it's not quite in the same style, but the like composition is very reminiscent of
go.
Drew Struzan's posters. Do you know who that is, Chris?
I
Drew
do. I
Struzan?
do. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, he
Yeah.
did a lot of like really awesome movie posters in like the 80s, probably the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
hmm
Um,
hmm
I was a huge fan. And yeah, this kind of has that same sort of composition to me.
hmm hmm
Just, doesn't have his sort of like iconic sketchy painting style.
Yeah. And I like how it's like, diagonal and it's very dynamic is what it
Hmm.
is. And I like the colors too. It's good.
Yeah, I dig it. And Evangeline Lilly just looks crazy heroic there. So
And
does Paul
yeah,
Rudd, but she looks a little bit more badass than he
and
does there.
and can I say like I don't know what it is for me. Like Michelle Pfeiffer just gets more beautiful as time goes on. Like I
Age
had
is
a thing
like
for
fine wine.
yeah, like I had a thing for her in Catwoman, when she played, Catwoman in
Oh
Batman
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Returns.
yeah.
And I
Hmm.
was like, ooh, the whole thing. Maybe that's probably why have such a huge latex fetish is because of her. I don't know, man.
Got into
But
your
yeah,
brain early.
yeah, and like I don't know, like every time I see her in any movie, she's just getting more and more pretty. It's weird. It's weird.
Yep, some actresses are like that. Some dudes too are like see him and you're like, man, I can't believe how old that guy is.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
does not look like. I think Tom Cruise kind of fits that category for me, but like I think he's pushing like 70 or something, but he looks like he's in his like late 40s, early 50s to me. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
don't know. Some people have the magic anti-aging gene.
Yeah, Paul Rudd has the
Him
magic
too, yeah, for
and
sure.
yeah, aging gene too. All right. So if you guys don't know, Michael and I have been, reviewing all the various MCU movies from S tier all the way down to F tier. I'll just let you guys know our favorite movie so far. For me is Thor Ragnarok, and for Michael is Avengers Infinity War on the S tier, and on our shit list, the really crappy one is for me is Iron Man 3, and then for Michael is Thor: The Dark World, followed up really closely by Iron Man 3.
Which actually, the way that's ordered, Iron Man 3 is my worst because it's
Oh,
ranked lower than Thor: The
oh,
Dark
oh,
World, right?
you're right.
So whatever's
You're
at
right.
the end of
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
is
yeah.
the bottom.
Oh, so we both agree.
Yep, we both really did not like that movie.
God, that whole like, oh, psych, subvert your expectations. Like, you know what? You could go F yourself with that shit, man. That's so stupid. That's just dumb. You wasted my time. Ugh. Wow, I'm so bitter. All right. Oh, and also we have of course the critic store Rotten Tomato score as well as audience Rotten Tomato score as well.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
um all right, so tonight we will be talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp. First movie that we will be talking about. And Michael, it's been forever since I've seen this movie, so if you could do me a huge favor by giving me a quick review of it, I would be very thankful.
Uh, sh yeah, sure. So quick high-level overview. I'll give you like the synopsis of the story the best I can remember it. I watched it more than a week ago at this point, but um, basically, the movie starts with Paul Rudd. He's under house arrest for some reason. I can't remember exactly. I think it's because of the events of Civil War. Because in Civil War, there's Team Cap and there's Team Iron Man, and there's this really badass scene where they're fighting in an airport, and I believe that airport's in Germany or something somewhere.
Uh-huh.
I think it's in Europe. I don't think it's in the U.S. And Captain America's team brings Ant-Man to that fight. And I guess uh, either it's like part of uh, so Ant-Man's played by Paul Rudd, but the character's name is Scott. Um, I think Scott either was like because he was on parole from having previously been in prison, and that was like a violation of his parole or something like that, or it was just like had nothing to do with that, and it was just
Mm.
illegal activity in Europe. Um, he he is now under house arrest, and he's like 3 days away from getting off of house arrest, but he has this
Yeah.
ankle bracelet, so he can't leave his house. And so he has like, and this was something that was actually really interesting watching this movie in 2022 after the pandemic was
Mm.
seeing because this movie came out before the pandemic happened and seeing Paul Rudd's character to see Scott living the pandemic life, living the lockdown life, where he's like stuck in his house, can't go
Oh yeah.
anywhere. He's trying
Right.
to like entertain himself and his kid, and he's built this like elaborate underground tunnel system with all these cardboard boxes for he and his daughter to have this like underground Ant-Man adventure.
Hmm.
And he's also trying to run his company from home with the help of the Michael Pena character. I can't remember the character's name. I don't know if you're really good with names, Chris. I don't know if you remember, but
Oh.
that one, yeah, because it's been a while since you've seen it, so that might be hard. But anyway, Michael Pena's character, I'm just going to call him by the actor's name.
Yeah.
He's kind of like helping Scott run the company. And anyway, so that's where our main hero is. He's trying really hard to do the right thing, to be good, especially for his daughter. He doesn't want to get in trouble and go to prison again. And he has this particular special agent, this like law enforcement agent. I think he's from the FBI or something.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Who's
is
just
FBI.
like, there you
Into
go.
magic, right?
Who's yeah, he's like, yeah, the guy who gets really excited about the magic. That's one of the things that Scott has busied himself with. Like he spent a lot of time learning, close-up magic with like card tricks and things. And he shows one of the things to the FBI agent. And he's like, hey man, can you show me how to do that? I've got like a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
kid's birthday party I gotta go to. Anyway, so this agent is just like really trying hard to catch Scott because he's got a bad feeling, like he knows that he's up to something, but Scott really isn't. He's like actually legit trying to be cool. Um, and then at some point, and I don't know if there's something that triggers it. I can't remember, but at some point Scott has this like vision of the quantum realm and and also this like memory of a woman and a little girl hiding in a dresser. And then he
Oh,
like
that's
wakes
right.
up. I think he was like snoozing in the bathtub or something. Wakes up, was like, whoa, that was real weird. That was too weird. I'm gonna call Hope, or he either calls Hope or Hank. Which for those that don't know, Hank Pym is the original Ant-Man. He's a scientist who developed the original like Ant-Man technology to be able to shrink and grow. And Hope is his daughter, who was dating Scott in the last at some point in the past. I can't remember if they were actually dating in Ant-Man 1, but they had
Mm.
been previously. But anyway, uh, and now that I'm giving this spiel, I should also say that the opening of the movie was actually an like old flashback of Hank and did I write her name down? The Michelle Pfeiffer character. What is her name? I think it's Janet. So Hank and Janet are the original Ant-Man and the original Wasp,
Oh.
and they are like flying into the upper atmosphere, getting really small to go and try to like dismantle this nuclear bomb that is this like ballistic missile that's coming for some city, and they can't pry open the rivets, and so Janet says, I gotta go really small to get in there. And Hank's like, no, if you do that, you'll go too small. You get stuck in the quantum realm. That's too dangerous. You can't do it. But she's like, we gotta do it. And so she
Yeah.
goes really small. She gets inside there, totally wrecks the ballistic missile, so it's completely deactivated, saves the world. But she gets lost in the quantum realm. And that's basically where she's been up to this point. So Hank and Hope have been trying to find a way to find her, to get back to her, but they've up to this point nothing's been successful.
Yeah.
So anyway, Scott has this weird dream. He ends up, he's like, that was weird. Let me call Hank or Hope. I can't remember which one he calls, but he calls them. It goes straight to voicemail, and he's like, yeah, I had this weird dream. I don't know. This is stupid. I shouldn't have called you. I'm sorry. Then he passes out and wakes up in Hope's car, and she's driving him somewhere, and he's like, "Well, hey, wait, no, I can't be out of my house. Like this is, I'm gonna get in trouble." And she's like, "Hey, don't worry about it. We got it covered." And what they did was they took off the ankle bracelet from him and they put it on an ant. And she's like, "Yeah, we taught the ant like." We've been monitoring your movement patterns. It knows your entire daily routine. Like it's fine. And the ant's, taking a bath and playing cards and doing all this shit that Scott was doing, wearing the ankle bracelet. So he's kind of moving around the apartment. But basically sorry for rambling. I'll try to condense this and get to the damn point already. But basically, Hope is like, hey, my dad and I have been trying to find my mom for all this time, and we've been working on this machine that can get us into the quantum realm, and it's taken a really long time. We finally got the thing turned on last night, and 5 minutes later you called, talking about mom. So we think that there's some kind of connection between you and her, and we don't know what's up with that, but we need your help. And I can't remember exactly like how they need his help, and things get real wacky later. But that's the basic premise: is Hank and Hope need Scott to help them get into the quantum realm to go and rescue Janet because they believe that she's in there. Meanwhile, there are like two enemy factions. One is this sort of like technology arms dealer who works with. Basically, he helps Hope and Hank get a hold of these like very important pieces of tech that they need, like from the black market, and he eventually realizes that he can actually get more money from potentially turning them over to the authorities because the authorities are looking for them. Hank and Hope are, for whatever reason, on the like most wanted list. The FBI has been after them, but they're using Hank's technology to like shrink their laboratory to the size of like a suitcase, and then they take it. They take it to some other place and then pop it up in a new location, and so it's really hard for the authorities to track them. But this arms dealer is like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna change the our agreement here, like so you better start playing nice with me. So he's in the mix, and then obviously you have the authorities that are chasing him. So I guess there's actually three factions, and then the third faction is there's this mysterious ghost character who can like phase through walls and shit, and nobody really knows like what's going on with her. They don't, Hope and Hank and Scott don't know who she is. The FBI is not really. The FBI is like aware of this like ghost character, but they don't really know who she is either. And then the arms dealers, those guys are just surprised when she appears. But her story is that there was some event that happened with like quantum technology. I can't remember if like any of the main characters weren't involved. It might have been Hank. And then the Lawrence Fishburne character, I think his name is Bill. The Lawrence Fishburne character is an old colleague of Hank's. They worked together on quantum tech in the past, had a falling out. But at some point, the ghost character, she was a little girl, and I think there was some kind of like quantum tech accident that, like, I think it killed her mom, and it gave her this weird phasing ability. It's not really an ability; it's more like a condition because it's like killing her. And so, long story short, and this is like a bit of a spoiler. One of the twists in the in the movie is so you've got Hank, Hope, and Scott are trying to figure out like how they can get in to save Janet, and there's this ghost character that's in the mix, like fucking things up. Like, man, what's going on with her? Let's go talk to Bill because we need his help to figure out how we can get this quantum thing working to go help Janet. Like, and then they leave. Like, oh, surprise! Bill's actually working with the ghost character, and he's helping her try to solve her problem. And so, long story short, all those different factions are kind of conflicting. Everybody's trying to, Hank, Hope, and Scott are trying to avoid the authorities long enough to be able to get into the quantum realm and save Janet. The authorities are after them. The ghost character is trying to steal the technology and also hijack the quantum tech for herself. That way she can cure her illness. This weird phasing thing that she's doing, which for some reason is by her doing that, it prevents Hank, Hope, and Scott from saving Janet for some reason. It's not really super clear. And then the FBI are on them, and then the arms dealer is also just kind of like he's got a bunch of thugs, and he's double crossing people all along the way. So that's. Sorry for being so long-winded.
Good.
I wasn't really able to summarize it very succinctly, but that's the gist.
Yeah, no, thank you, Michael. And Cyborg says Ant-Man was probably, put in house arrest because he caused a ruckus in Berlin. And also Michael Peña's character, his name is Lewis. So thank you so much for that, Cyborg. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And Cookie,
yes, perfect.
Killer Cookie's in the house. She says, just saying
Yeah, Cookie, welcome back.
quick hello before I have to leave. I hope you are both doing well. Yeah, thank you so much, Cookie. So good to see you here. Thank you so much for stopping by. But yeah, holy cow, Michael, when I asked you to give me like a quick review or synopsis, I had no idea you're actually gonna give a whole summary of the movie. And thank you for that because I absolutely do not remember anything from the movie except Lawrence Fishburne's character and then the phaser girl. And I, 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 I'm just gonna say it. This movie suffers from shitty villain syndrome or whatever. It's the villains was not very memorable, and yeah, it was. But yeah, good job, Michael. Holy cow. If you didn't remind me all that stuff, I would not have remembered anything at all.
Forgotten all of it.
I don't remember. I just remember that stupid ant playing the drums at the end of the scene or post credit. Everyone was pissed off on that.
Yeah, it was a pretty lame mid or post credits scene. I don't know which one, but yeah.
It was a post credit scene. Yeah, it was a post credit.
So wow,
yeah.
That's the one you had to wait for all the way to the end.
Yeah, we're like, what the hell? That's it. All right, fuck this. We're out. And then, yeah. So yeah, thank you again, Michael, for sharing all that. So like, let me ask you then. What are your opinions on this movie?
Sure. And if you, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to like for me to just like unload all of my notes and then you go, or do you prefer to do like the back and forth where like I'll give you a little bit of a thing and then we'll talk about it?
Back and forth is good.
Okay, great. At a high level, so I'll give you my like high level opinion, and then we'll kind of dig into some of the nitty gritty stuff. I'm with you. It's just okay. There are certain things about this movie that I really, really like, and there's a whole bunch of things that I'm like pretty lukewarm on, and a couple of things that I think are just dumb or just don't make any sense. And at least one thing that I like really don't like, I think is I have a strong distaste for one thing that they do, and we'll get to that specifically later. But for the most part, my general reaction to this was like, it's fine. I don't know. Some of the dumb stuff kind of prevents me from really enjoying it more. And it's not like there's an adjective to describe plots where you can say that it's got a really tight plot, meaning not a lot of plot holes. Like you watch that and it feels like, oh yeah, that this thing happens, which causes this to happen, which causes this reaction, but oh no, then this thing happens very plausibly, and then it causes this chain reaction. And you can watch a movie like that and just it feels real. It feels so believable because everything that's happening feels like, yeah, that's exactly what probably would have happened. So a plot like that can feel really like put together and connected. A really loose plot or a really sloppy plot can feel just like you're constantly kind of like stumbling and tripping over like what's happening. You're like, wait a minute, why would they do that? Like that doesn't make sense. Like what about this thing over here? Like they completely forgot about this person. Like what's going on with this? Like that's a really weak reason for that to be
Mm.
happening. And so this movie kind of feels like that to me. It does not have a very tight plot. It feels real loosey goosey, and they're kind of just like very uh the like connections between scenes and between things that are happening are really delicate. They're not real strong and firm. Like, oh yeah, I there's no way you can convince me that these things wouldn't have happened that the way that they did. So
Mhm,
I don't know. At
mhm.
a high level, that's kind of what I think. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I to be super honest, I don't remember a lot about this film. I mean, I don't have any super positive things to say about it, nor do I have any like horrible negative things to say about this movie. Um, all I remember is that, oh wow, Michelle Pfeiffer is back in this movie, and God, she's
She's
hot
looking
and
good.
she's looking good. Um, and also the Wasp has like guns as weapons now. God, I can't remember. Um, she has blasters.
Ye-
Pew, pew. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yep.
yeah,
She can kind of like shoot a little like force blast
yeah.
thing.
Um, sorry. I'm trying to pull stuff out of my ass, and I'm having trouble coming up with stuff to say about this. Yeah, it
No,
was, yeah, it was okay, I guess.
yeah. Well, one of the things that we can do is we can get into uh some of the details because I've got notes for those, and then as those jog your memory,
Yeah, yeah,
we can
please.
kind of talk a little bit about
Thank
them.
you.
Um, one of the things that I put right at the top of the list is like as a positive is I think the suits, like the superhero suits, are actually really cool for both Scott and Hope. And in fact, I think Hope's suit is actually even cooler than Scott's. Um, not just because she has wings so she can fly, which is also something that they kind of like you can tell that they really struggle to deal with that because there's so many scenes where like they both get into their suits, get real small, and then she goes off flying, and then just like out of nowhere, a flying ant comes in for Scott to jump on so he can, keep up
Right.
with her. Which felt a little cheesy, but um, for the most part, I think both their suits are really cool. I love the helmets. I love the like aesthetic. And then what they can do, their abilities, I think are pretty cool. Um, but yeah, what do you think about the suits and the powers, Chris?
In general, I think all the Marvel costume design, all the suits and everything, like Marvel hits it out of the park. Like it looks functional, it looks aesthetically pleasing, it looks, very sleek and dynamic and functional. I most of the time have never any issues with any of the suits, except for the whole nano suit thing. I mean, we talked about that.
Mm.
I mean, that's I get it story wise, but yeah, I'm not a lover of the nano suits. But like Ant-Man's suit, the Wasp suit, it's fine. Even the girl phaser girl suit
Mm-hmm.
is makes sense. So yeah, costume design is always A+ for me. Marvel does a great job with that.
Yeah. Yep. Totally.
Hmm.
All right. So a negative note that I have here is what is there to eat in the quantum realm? How in the hell does Hope's mom survive down there? Because the idea is that Janet shrinks down and she's stuck in the quantum realm so long, so, like for decades. Like she ages down there. She, becomes the sort of like the mountain hermit who like knows the wilderness super well. So when they finally get to her at the end of the movie, she's got like this hood, this hooded robe, and she like takes it off, Jedi Obi-Wan style, and reveals like,
Yeah.
oh, it was me all along, and she's like a master of this realm. Um, but and this is kind of a problem that I have with sort of like the physics of the movie. Like I know it's a movie and it's like a superhero movie about shrinking really small, but even like self consistently, like even if you just take at face value that like, okay, yeah, sure, physics, just like, the magic of physics allows this to happen. There's still things that are just weird to me, like the quantum realm is supposedly, my understanding is if you go small enough, you're actually going into the space in between particles. Um, because everything's made up of atoms, and atoms are made up of, protons and electrons, and those are made up of quarks, and so on and so forth, all the way down to like this other reality of makeup, of material, of stuff that makes up the universe. That's kind of like, I guess, what the quantum realm is. Um, but when you do that, like if you take a human being who shrinks down to that size, aren't they made up of like a bunch of cells and atoms that themselves
Oh,
are have small enough that have their own quantum? So are you like, do you have quantum realms within quantum realms where like
right.
those, like, that doesn't really
Oh,
make any sense.
that's interesting. I never even thought of it that way.
But even beyond that, it's like, okay, well, if she shrinks down there, let's just assume that, let's poo-poo away that argument. Like, there's no food down there. Like that, the kind like you need to eat food that's made up of stuff that's made up of, the elements at a human scale, and that doesn't exist down there. So like, how the hell does she survive? Like, I don't know, maybe she's like drawing quantum energy or something. So, but they never really addressed that. Like, they just, it's just a given that she's just down there surviving. Um, I don't know. I felt that like that was kind of lazy. I don't know, did that bother you at all, Chris, or did you think about that?
I I I never thought too deeply about that. Yeah, now
Yeah.
that you brought it up, I'm just like, oh wow,
Now
that's
you can't unsee it.
yeah, it's weird because yeah, like you said, we are made up of atoms and everything, and if we shrink in their world, it's like, is it even smaller than is like,
Yeah.
whoa, that's kind of trippy, that's crazy. And Embalmed Apple, hello, thank you so much for
Hey,
being here.
welcome,
Hello,
Involved Apple.
hello, hello. Yeah, I don't know, and that's a good question. It's like, how does she eat? How does she survive? And um, yeah, it's interesting. Good point.
Thank you. All right, and we kind of already talked about this. I had a positive note about Scott's house arrest and how it kind of hits different post-pandemic. Yeah, that was definitely really interesting to watch, especially knowing like, oh, this was made before the pandemic, and like, man, they really got it. They nailed it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I also have a very positive note here for Scott's relationship with his daughter, who I think is
yeah.
Cassie. I
Yes,
might
yes.
be getting it. Yeah. Okay. Great. Got it.
Yep, yep.
Um, anytime those two are together, it's wonderful. It's just so charming. Like, Paul Rudd plays like a really loving father, and the little girl who plays Cassie, she's super charming and adorable, and is like looking up to her dad. Um, it's just fantastic. Everything with those two, I just loved, and
Yeah,
it's great. Because that grounds the like, I think without that the rest of the like without that the rest of the movie would be much less enjoyable, um, because you just wouldn't care.
right.
But because you have these two characters and you really love their relationship, and Scott is so cognizant and aware of being not only being a good dad, but of like being a good role model for her. So that's why he's trying so hard to not get in trouble with the law again, and to do the right thing, and to make the right decisions. Um, so yeah, so I really dug that relationship between those two characters. Sounds like you liked it too, Chris.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole relationship makes me like Scott a lot more. Like it's like, oh yes, he's a good father, he might be bad in the eyes of the law, but he's actually a great father, great person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna try to like go a little bit quick here because I know we've already been talking for a while. We want to try to get two movies done tonight. So I've got a negative note here about Scott's dream. So if you remember that dream that Scott had, where he's like, "Oh wow, it was weird," um, the dream that he had of like this woman playing hide and seek with a little girl, and the little girl's hiding in the dresser. Turns out that was a memory that Janet had of playing hide and seek with Hope, and that was when Hope was the little girl hiding in the dresser. And when Scott is telling Hope and Hank about this dream, they both, and they get to the end of it, and they are asking him questions like, "Wait a minute, a little girl, and she was hiding in a dresser. How, what color was the dresser? What was the little girl wearing? A red sweat, And so they're like asking questions to like confirm that it is the memory of, that I think it was like one of the last times that Hope saw her mom before she went off to save the world and ended up stuck in the
Mhm.
quantum realm. Um, that's all fine. Hope and Hank look at each other and realize like, oh my gosh, that's Janet's memory. But for some reason, they immediately jump to the conclusion that they go, "Yep, that confirms it. She's alive." And I'm like, "Huh? What? How does that confirm that she's alive? Like, how could you possibly know that? Like, maybe there's just some weird remnant of memory, in the quantum realm, or maybe maybe she died and went to heaven, and she's like trying to communicate with Scott for some reason. Like, especially as like scientifically minded people that they're supposed to be, how the hell did they jump to that conclusion? Like, it just that's this is one of like a series of little things that on its own is not really enough to like completely break the suspension of disbelief, but it chips away at it. It's like just enough to like put a crack in the window, and then you do that enough times and eventually the window shatters. um so yeah. uh there's also like there are a couple of fight scenes in this movie, but I think they're all pretty like underwhelming. They all feel kind of like phoned in. There's nothing like super interesting about them, with a few exceptions. There are a couple of parts where like there's one scene where Hope is fighting a bunch of dudes in a kitchen, and
Yeah.
there's one guy grabs the thing that she's after, and he's like trying to escape with it and like run out the back door, and she grabs a little salt shaker off the table, throws it, and makes it like really big, and then it like so big that it blocks the door, and the guy slams into it and bounces off. Like, okay, that was pretty clever. I like that. Um, but most of the other like fight scenes and the fight choreography is just kind of like it feels just real average. There's nothing that feels like, ooh, yeah, wow, really good kick there, or oh man, the way that she like flipped that guy over and slammed him into the table. Like there isn't a lot of stuff like that. Um, do you remember much the like action sequences or fight sequences, Chris? Did they wow you?
Uh, no, I mean, aside from the one that you just said with the whole throwing of the salt shaker into the doorway and making it big, that was cool. I also remember her like running on top of the knife, like she became small
Mm-hmm.
and then he was like swinging the knife and then she was actually walking or running
Yeah,
on top of it.
I think
So that
he
was
like was like throwing knives, and so she
yeah,
like
yeah.
the knife was coming, and she was like running as
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
so
like that was pretty badass.
that's pretty cool. But anything else, it's like it's fine because I know there was a phasing fighting scene and that was
Mm.
again I can't
Oh
remember.
man,
It's yeah,
it's so lame.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I've got a note about that. I think that later, where like Scott fights Ghost, and it's in the finale, and it's like the lamest thing ever. Because
Uh-huh,
I
uh-huh.
think she's just like walking and like walking through walls and stuff, and Scott's like running away and fighting her a little bit, and it's just like, really, that's it? That's all you're gonna do with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I have a note here about the ant playing the drums. Not the post-credit scene, but like actually in the movie. And Hope, Hank, and Scott are like checking in. Like they look at like a security camera to make sure that everything's okay with the ant that's pretending to be Scott, and it's in there
Uh-huh.
like playing the drums. And Hank is like, he like scoffs, disgusted. What are you, 15?
Uh,
I thought that was pretty funny. He's like still being judgmental. All right, so this was a big plus for me. At least the first time I saw it, I thought this was hilarious. The second time I saw it, not quite as funny, but still pretty good. Um, for some reason, Scott and Hope have to go to, I think, Cassie's school and get something. Oh yeah, because
oh,
uh, Cassie brought for show and tell this like little trophy that she's really proud of. That it's like her dad's trophy or something for being world's greatest grandma or something silly like that. And that's where Scott has hidden his old Ant-Man suit, and so they need to go into the school and get it because Scott is currently using some like older version of a suit, but they need another one for Hank.
yeah.
Um, but the one that Scott's using is malfunctioning, and so he's like growing big and then small, and he ends up like in a janitorial closet with Hope, and it blows him up really big, and he's kind of stuck in there. and then eventually it shrinks him down to like about 2 feet tall, and it kind of gets
Yeah,
stuck there. And
that's pretty
so,
funny.
and nothing else is working, so he grabs like a little hoodie out of like one of the kids' cubbies and puts it on, and it's like really oversized, and he's running around the school looking like a kid, and even gets caught in the hallway by like one of the teachers is like, "Hey, you, yeah, what, do you have a hall pass?"
Yeah,
And then he just like makes a run for it. It's really really silly. Um, so that was fun. I
that was
like that
funny.
scene.
Yeah,
Yeah, you like
agreed.
that one too, Chris?
That was a lot. Yeah, now that you reminded me, yeah, that definitely was a lot of fun.
And the best part is like after that scene is done, like they get the suit, they escape, and I think Scott is still small, still like 2 feet, and he's kind of like trying to get back in the van with Hope
Oh
and
yeah,
Hank,
yeah, yeah,
and they're having a great time with it. Hank's like, "Hey champ, how was school?" Scott says,
yeah.
"Ha ha ha ha, get your jokes out." So cranky. Do you want a juice
Yeah.
box and some string cheese? And Scott's like, "Do you really have that?" Um, so yeah, those three I think are pretty great. They've got a lot of
Yeah,
fun stuff.
yeah, good chemistry.
Yeah, and good jokes. The Ant-Man movies have pretty good jokes.
Yeah.
Um, I got a negative note here for the CGI being kind of wonky in some parts. Speaking of that scene where Scott's in the janitor closet and he's kind of like ballooned up to like the size of a mountain troll. Maybe not a mountain troll, maybe like a bridge troll. Mountain trolls are huge. Um, but so he's big, taking up almost the full space, and Hope's just like her regular size. And she's kind of like leaning on his thigh, like looking up at him. And it just looks so janky.
Oh.
Like their eye lines aren't meeting. The like lighting looks different between the two of them. Um, I don't know. It was one of those scenes where I was like, ooh, man, you have so many other scenes that look so good,
Hmm.
but that one looks like somebody forgot that it was in the movie, and then they had to like do it real quick at the end. I don't know. Chris's favorite topic, shitty villain syndrome. I've got
Yeah.
a negative note here. The villains in this movie are pretty lame.
Lame.
Um, Ghost, I think her backstory is okay, but the telling of her story is pretty underwhelming. And no offense to the actress, but I didn't think she was super compelling. Um, Lawrence Fishburne was amazing. I mean, everything he's in, he's incredible. But even in
Yeah.
this role, where he's like, it's a pretty minor role and he's not really doing a whole lot, he still really sells it. He's really cool. She's not so much. Did you like the Ghost character, Chris? Do you remember her much?
I remember her. It She didn't make me like the movie more or less. It was just again, it was a it was supposed to be like an anti-hero kind of deal, and I just
Mm.
or anti-villain, or I don't know what the right phrase is. I mean, she's not a real bad guy, but she's just misunderstood kind of. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Oh, okay, that's fine, but they didn't really do much with her, and so I just felt like she was kind of wasted, and it was kind of insignificant as a villain. So I did not like the villain in this story. Was there another villain? I mean, I know
Yeah.
you said there's like a third party, and I do not remember the third party bad guys at all.
Yes. So I think, so let me see my notes here. Everything's all right, but just nothing amazing could have been awesome. Said, oh yeah. So this was a note about Ghost. Is like I thought that she could have been awesome if they set her up over more movies. Like if we had more time to like really
Yeah.
get into her backstory. Um, I think the guy's name is Sonny. He's the like slimy mafia dude who's like, getting them access to black market tech and stuff. Um, yeah, he's in the movie. You may remember there's a scene where he's trying to track them down, but he can't find them, so he shows up at Scott's place of business where Lewis, thanks Cyborg, um, where Lewis and crew are there, and Sonny and his thugs they break out this series of syringes with a liquid in it that makes them more susceptible to talking. And Lewis is like, "You mean like a truth serum?" And they're like,
Uh,
"No, it's not a truth serum." Uh, oh, so then what is it? It's gonna make you tell us what we want to know. That's truth serum. Uh, yeah, it's those guys, right? Like, does that
yeah.
jog your memory? Do you remember them
Yeah,
now?
that does. Yep.
Yeah, and I don't think I mean, for what they are, those guys are fine, but like what they are is just like boilerplate, off the shelf, slimy mafia dudes, and
Yeah,
it's just that is not interesting.
yeah,
Um, so there's those guys. Then you've also got the FBI agents are kind of antagonists. They're probably a pretty minor role. They're kind of just in the background for most of the movie until like the very end when they finally do, find out like, aha, this is where Hope and Hank are, and Scott might even be with them, so we got him. Um, and like the lead FBI guy, he's pretty good.
hmm
Forget the character's name. Um, but yeah, he's interesting. He's got like some chemistry with Scott, and clearly cares about his job. And I don't really have any problem with like his storyline, but that doesn't make him like a super compelling villain. Like he's just kind of
right,
an antagonistic force that makes sense.
right.
Um, and I think that's it. I think those are like the three big ones. You've got Ghost and Bill trying to, fix Ghost's problem. You've got the slimy mafia dudes, and you've got the FBI crew. And none of them are really like whoa, that's super cool. Like the probably the most interesting is the Bill and Ghost situation, but that one completely falls apart for me because the whole time I'm just like, you've never shown us why Bill and Ghost can't just go to Hank and Hope and say, "Hey, we need your help. Like you guys are
Mm,
brilliant at this quantum stuff. We have this innocent girl here who didn't ask for this. This just happened to her, and I think part of her backstory too is that
she worked for
when
Shield,
when
right?
exactly
Yeah,
when I think Bill was the first one to like find her or to like try to help her and get help for her. But once the U.S. government found out about it, they turned her into a weapon, and
yeah.
made her go on all these like missions and kill all these people and do all this nasty shit. And so that really kind of like fucked her up. Um, but they never tell us why or show us why she can't she and Bill can't just like go to Hank and Hope for help.
Mm,
And there's even a scene where Bill finally says something sensical. He's like, "Well, wait a minute. They're trying to save Janet. She's like the most brilliant physicist I ever knew. Like maybe she can help you." Like yes, that,
yeah.
and yet he says that, and that doesn't convince Ghost. He doesn't even convince himself or the other people in there. They just continue with this plan of like, we need to use the machine, get Janet out of there.
Mm,
um I don't know. So it would have been much more interesting. She would have been a much more compelling villain if they had very explicitly made it clear that her goals are in direct conflict with our hero's goals, and that you can, in order for like once you get to the outcome, it can only be one way or the other. Like the hero succeeding necessarily prevents her from succeeding, like prevents her
right.
from being able to cure herself, or vice versa. Like the only way she can cure herself is by foiling the hero's plan. But they never really do that. They never explain why that's the case. So I don't know.
Mm,
That's my rant about that. Um, Oh, in fact, that's the next thing. The next big negative for me was they need Janet to save Ghost. This plot point feels confusing, contrived, meh. Um, oh, okay. So here's a scene that I hated. This is the thing that I teased earlier, where I was like, "There's one thing in this movie that I really find very distasteful."
mm-hmm.
So at some point, Bill and Ghost get the better of our heroes. They've captured Scott, Hank, and Hope, and they're all tied up in these chairs in like Bill's living
Right.
room or something.
That's right.
Um, and I think there is some kind of time pressure where they need to get back to their lab in order to, because for some stupid reason, and there's another thing that I hate, for some stupid reason, at some point they're like, "Hey, we know where Janet is. We found her. We just need to get in. We need to somebody needs to go into the quantum realm in this vehicle that we've created and rescue her and pull her out of there. But we've only got 2 hours. Like, where the hell did that come from? Like, just randomly pull out of their ass that like suddenly they only have 2 hours to save her, and then that's it for like 100 years or something. And I'm like, wait a minute. And by the way, I'm on a tangent here. This isn't the distasteful thing. This is just like an annoying plot problem. Uh, because up to this point, there's been no pressure. They've never discussed like, we're really trying to hit this window. We need to get everything set up for this window because that's the only way we're going to be able to actually get these instruments aligned and detector or whatever. Up to this point, they've just been like, we don't even know if she's in there. Like, we don't even know if this thing's going to work. So we're just kind of like trying to figure things out. And you get the impression that like, if Scott had suggested like, hey, I'm hungry. Do you guys want to like take a little break and go get some Chinese food or something? And they said like, okay, sure. And they went and did that. Would they have just like completely missed this window and would like have never have found her? I don't know. That's dumb. But anyway, that thing aside, so they're captured in Bill's house. They're all tied up and they're getting really anxious because they need to go. There's time pressure. They need to go get back to their lab, and they want to make sure that Ghost and Bill don't disable their equipment or destroy everything or whatever. And so what happens is, up to this point, there's been this interesting little thing that's been happening between Scott and Hank, where Hank always has this like little box of Altoids next to him, and Scott's constantly asking like, "Hey, could I have one of those?" And he tried to like reach for it, and Hank slaps him on the hand,
Right.
and he's like, "No." And up to that point, it just seems like Hank's just being an unreal man. He's just being mean to Scott. But then we find out here like what's going on, and Hank is starting to like, he looks like he's having a heart attack. He's like, he's wincing, and Hope starts to freak out. She's like, "Oh my God, he got a bad heart. Like he needs his medicine. That's what's in the Altoids tin. It's on the counter. Like, please." Just he's dying, like, and then Scott is like freaking out because now he's like, oh, that's why he wouldn't let me get in there. Like, he was sensitive and didn't want to reveal that he has this heart condition, and that's this medicine that he needs. It's this like point of weakness and this point of pride for Hank, and there's so much going on here, and you're like, man, wow, that's really good. And so Hank and Hope are pleading desperately with Bill and Ghost to like, you don't even have to untie us. Just give him the medicine, because he's going to die. And Bill, who is like an old friend of Hank, he's really upset, and Ghost like doesn't really give a shit. But I think Bill eventually does like go grab the Altoids, and when he does, he opens it up, and like all these ants spring out of it and become like huge. And then Hank just pops up, and he's like, he was pretending the whole time. The ants like surround the bad guys and free the good guys. And that's how the good guys get out of that situation. And I hate it. I hate it so much for a couple of reasons. One, the game, the sort of like the show, the farce that they put on is actually better than the real story. Than like, if that was actually real, wow, that would have been such great storytelling. To have this thing that you'd been setting up with Hank and Scott pay off in this really like emotional way, and being able to see the emotional connection between Hank and Bill, and because those two have not been talking for decades, but clearly still really care for each other in the few scenes that we've seen them in. So it builds up to this like really powerful emotional moment that you're like, and it's surprising, especially in a movie that is not that surprising. Like most of the like twists and turns you can kind of see coming, but this one really caught me off guard. So that's one. Like what they were pretending was actually way better than what was real in the story. The second thing is, this is not hero behavior. Like, being deceptive in that way, playing on people's emotions, like being the boy who cried wolf, even if you're doing it in this situation where you're trying to, outsmart your opponents and trying to get out, this just felt like that's something the villains would do. Like, heroes don't behave that way. If our heroes were Ghost and Bill and these were the bad guys, this scene would play completely differently and would make sense. He'd be like, oh yeah, of course our hero Bill is going to give our villain Hank the pills that he needs because he's the good guy. Even if they're fighting, like, he's not going to let this guy have a heart attack right here, and his daughter's right there that about to lose her dad. Like, Bill's the good guy in this scene, and they're all the bad guys. And I just hated it so much. It's just such a detestable. It's just detestable behavior for your heroes to exhibit, and for them to get out of that situation that way. It just felt so slimy to me. But I don't know. Do you remember that scene, Chris? Like, did that
I
bother you
do
or?
I do remember it definitely didn't bother me. So it's interesting. So according to you, you don't feel like heroes could be a little bit sneaky and do a little cry wolf to get out of a certain situation.
I think they can, but not like this. Not in a
Oh,
way that is. It's deceitful in a very harmful way, especially because Bill, at least, is not he's not a full on like enemy Thanos type character. Like he's Hank's
sure.
old friend. Like they're just having a disagreement and haven't gotten over it.
Right.
But generally speaking, yeah, I think with storytelling, showing how heroes behave and encounter and deal with adversity and get out of sticky situations, teaching the viewer that the way you do that is by playing on people's emotions, being deceitful, and hijacking the the goodness in people and using it against them. That is not the way, man. Like
Especially
that's
with
just that's gross.
especially with Hank's character. I mean, if we saw him be kind of like a jokester doing that throughout the MCU, then we would be, I guess, conditioned to think, oh yeah, he's a prankster, you know. But since we know that he's a very serious guy through and through, you know, he doesn't really make jokes or anything, then, you know, for him to pull that kind of stunt is, would you say a little bit out of character then?
I would not necessarily say it's out of character, other than it's villainous behavior. It's not. I mean, it's one thing if I don't know. Yeah, I think it's one thing if like they're tied up and uh, actually in this movie there's another example I can give you that I think is just fine.
Mm.
At some other point, I don't know if it's before or after this, but Hank and Hope get arrested by the FBI. They actually get caught and they're like in an interrogation room. And the way they get out of that is Scott sneaks in as little Ant-Man and he delivers uh, Hope her wasp suit. So she puts that on and then she can shrink small and now she can get out of the interrogation room. And Scott also gives Hank an FBI outfit. So then he puts on like this FBI cap and this FBI coat and these like sunglasses, and they walk out of the room. Well, he walks out of the room. Hope is super tiny and she flies, so they don't see her. But that kind of like level of deception feels okay to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I think because there's, well, I don't really want to dial like too deep into the psychoanalytics of it because it's probably I could probably I'll probably go on for way too long, and we've already been talking about Ant-Man and Wasp for a while. But yeah, in summary, I just think one of those is fine,
Uh, uh,
perfectly
uh,
fine hero behavior. The other one is just it disgusted me. Like I was just like,
uh.
ooh, that's not. Mm-mm. I don't want to see my heroes behaving like that. That's gross.
Sure. And actually Totoro is in here. He says, "Hey guys, great to be
Hey,
here."
Totoro.
He's he also says, "I agree. I see this a lot in kids' cartoon shows lately. The main character ends up with the old, I messed up something and I need to weave it together, a clever illusion to keep it from harming me, and then the win ends up being a successful web of lies.
Ooh,
A web of lies."
yeah, not nice. Um, so yeah, that when that scene happened, I would like really
Rubbed you the wrong way, huh?
there was yeah that
Yeah.
ground my gears. Uh,
Mm,
stopped and had to write that down.
yeah.
Um, So okay, moving on. Let's see. I've got a couple more here. Oh my God, too many. I'll try to get through these fast.
Yeah,
Uh,
take your time, man.
another negative. Heroes escape Bill and Ghost after the heart attack fake out. The heroes. Oh yeah. So after all of that, the ants like jump out and they're just like they're standing there like kind of they have Ghost and Bill kind of cornered, and then the scene just like cross fades to the next scene, and it's just like wait wait a minute, like just we just like cut straight to like Hank's lab and the heroes are out of there. Like it just feels like it was like an unfinished unearned scene. They had like had an idea
Mm.
and they're like, oh yeah, that's uh we're out of time. Whatever. That's close enough. We got
Uh,
80% of what that scene needed to be. Like, move on.
uh-huh,
Um,
uh-huh.
so yeah, I wasn't a fan of that. I've got a negative here for the truth serum scene. Michael Pena acting his butt off, but it's just not that interesting or funny. I guess it's better than a straight played alternative where they just do it in dialogue. This version is more clever, just not wowing me. So yeah, another one of those scenes that's like, eh, not
Mm.
bad, but just not very good.
Sure.
Oh, so this was a scene that I thought was just stupid. A little funny, but mostly stupid. At some point when Hank and Hope and Scott are in the lab and they're like turning all the equipment on and shit, Scott starts acting really weird. Um, he like rushes over to the computer and it's like, oh, I don't have much time. I've got to like do some things. And he's
Oh,
being kind
yeah.
of effeminate. And then
Right.
he's like smiling at Hank and like, touching Hope's face. And it's like, oh, Honeybee or whatever her nickname was. And they
Yeah.
realize like, whoa, mom? And somehow she's like taken over Scott's body and mind. And she's like using
Yeah.
him as a puppet and he doesn't know. Um, and their explanation is that somehow um, she had implanted an antenna in Scott's head. Okay, fine. Even if we take that as a given, how the hell does that turn Scott into like a fully controllable human puppet? Like, I don't know. That there
Yeah, right.
are a lot of things like that in this movie that I just thought was like dumb and really
I
hard for me to get,
yeah.
especially because it's like this is a movie about really cool aspects of physics and the metaphysical universe and the limits of our scientific understanding of these things, but it just doesn't explore those things. It just doesn't go to these interesting places, and it's not smart about intriguing, very scientifically minded people.
Sure.
It just does like dumb, goofy stuff that's like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Right,
So
right.
I don't know. I didn't like that. Um, Next thing I put like a sudden stupid ticking clock. Oh yeah, we already talked about this. That like, oh, we've only got 2 hours to save Janet. Um, so that kind of came out of nowhere, and I thought was dumb. Um, Another negative: the new tracker, flying insects, presumably ants in a swarm. Oh yeah, I remember this. This is so stupid. Um, there's a scene where I think at some point, the way Hank keeps track of his lab, because the lab can shrink down, and the lab is normally like this gigantic building, but it can shrink down
Totally.
to the size of like a suitcase. In order to
Right.
keep track of it, they've got like a tracking device on it or something. Well, at some point, it gets stolen by the bad guys, and they found the tracking device and they destroyed it or something. And so the other heroes are freaking out. They're like, "Oh, how are we gonna find the lab?" And Hank goes like, "I've got a new tracking device." And what it ends up being is there's like a swarm of flying ants that fly in front of the van and form like an arrow in like a three-dimensional arrow in space, like in formation. These ants kind of cluster together and make these arrows. And so then the van like drives around the streets, and then the ants are flying ahead and like making an arrow like go this way. I was
Yeah.
like, this is dumb. This another thing is just so. Why? How is that the new tracking device? Like that is just so much more contrived and nonsensical. Like I don't know. I hate it. It's I don't like that either. Um, Another negative, the Scott fights Ghost scene. If you go back and rewatch it, it's really, really lame.
Mm.
She's basically just walking. So they're like in this abandoned floor of like an office building, and he's like running away from her. Scott's running away from Ghost, and she's just kind of like walking and phasing through walls. Um, and they're like 3 or 4 separate shots of just that, of like, here she is, he's running and she's walking, and we cut away and like some other things are happening with Lewis and Hope driving the van or whatever, and come back, like Scott's running through this empty office building and Ghost is just walking behind him, and then cut away to like, oh, here's this crazy shit that's happening with Hank in the quantum realm. Cut back to Scott and Ghost, same thing, and that just goes on for like the whole finale, and then finally she gets to him. She like throws him through a wall or something, and realizes like, oh, it's all just a diversion. Like, I don't actually have the thing that you want. Ha ha ha! Got you. And then she
Mm.
leaves. I don't know. It was I just thought that was really dumb. Okay, so I've got a plus minus here for the shrinking cars, because throughout the movie they do this thing where like the characters will get into a normal car, and then they'll
Oh
shrink
yeah,
the car down to like the size of a matchbox car, and then the
yeah.
car's like, kind of driving around like this little super tiny RC car. Um, it's fun and interesting, and I think it's totally appropriate to have in an Ant-Man movie. Um, However, there's some things about it, again, going back to like me introducing real science and getting annoyed that the movie doesn't account for it, is if you imagine a full-size vehicle and that wheel driving at 30 miles an hour, a certain number of rotations of that wheel will achieve that speed. And if you shrink that wheel way, way, way down, and you still want to go 30 miles an hour, that wheel now has to be moving so much faster,
Sure.
because at same distance, right? Like the big wheel
Yep.
can just
Hmm.
turn, like a half a turn and cover what the distance a little tiny wheel would have to turn like 1,000 times to get that far. Um, and so in the movie, when the cars shrink and they're like hauling ass, like they're in, it's like a chase scene and there's like a car behind them and they're going like 50 miles an hour, and the car goes whoosh, shrinks down and just keeps going at 50 miles an hour.
Right. Yep.
It's like there's no way the car could, like, those wheels couldn't possibly turn fast enough. Like the car would be shaking and the wheels would be like ripping off, or it would shrink down and go like super slow. So I don't know. That I thought was kind of dumb when you think about it. But if you don't think about it, if you just check your brain out,
Yeah.
it's fun. Like it's super
Yeah.
fun to see the cars getting small and getting big, and it's so it's kind of a plus and minus there for
I
me.
would I would say the cars would go slower because like you said, the radius of the 30 miles an hour going in the radius, the speed at which it's going, it's going to be much slower when you're shrunken down.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're not like an ant where you're small but you still have a lot of power, the car's
Hmm.
not like that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Good point.
Uh, Um. Another negative here for me, I put, how does matter maintain? Oh, so we already talked about this. It was, how does matter maintain the same properties when shrunk to quantum scale? This is the thing that I mentioned at the beginning. It was like, well, wait a minute, those things are made up of atoms. Like, do those atoms
Yeah.
get small? Do they like, does the quantum realm and those atoms get crazy small when you go to shrink to, like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Um, Another negative here, I put, just the question is, how is Janet not completely insane? Like, she was in the quantum realm by herself for 30 years.
Yeah.
Like, that amount of social isolation for anybody would make them eh, just a lunatic. And like, you
Right.
wouldn't be able to talk to that person. Like, they would just be completely gone. Um,
So
they
my
never addressed
I
that.
I have a question. Like for example, when you think of like people who go out in space, that whole idea of if your twin brother goes to Alpha Centauri and then comes back, he's going to be younger than you when he comes back
Mm,
because
hmm.
you aged quicker on Earth than you do in space. If I remember correctly, if that's the right thing. Your twin brother is actually younger than you when he comes back from space, and then you're actually much, much older. So my question is, like, when you're shrunken down into like a microscopic size in that quantum space, 30 years pass. I'm thinking she would either be still very, very young or is dead. Like, there's no way she could have aged the same rate that she aged with Michael Douglas's character. 30 years
Yeah,
in the
right.
quantum realm should not be the same 30 years as on Earth because, yeah, it would make a lot more sense to me if she just came out looking as beautiful as the day she went in. You know, it's like, oh yeah, because in the quantum time realm, 1 second equals 1 year for us, or something significant like time difference, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
that's what kind of got me. I'm like, wow, she looks exactly along the same age
Yeah.
as us. So that was kind of, or again, the opposite, like she's completely dead because in the quantum realm,
Yeah.
time goes super, super fast, It's like,
She was only in there for
"Arr."
like 10 seconds, and that was like
Yeah, and
50
then dead.
years, and she's gone.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that was my
I hadn't even
thought,
thought
like,
about that. Yeah, that's a really good point.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, oh yeah. Okay, so another negative. Janet has magic fingers.
Oh
When
yeah,
yeah,
that's
when she
right.
comes, like they
That's
finally rescue
right.
her, she comes out of the quantum realm and she like touches Ghost's face or whatever and just like heals her. Like,
Yeah.
what? But it's just like again more of this like frustration with this being on the surface a sciency movie, a science
Mm,
fiction kind of movie, but having all of these like woo woo, it's magic, like yay. Uh, yeah, didn't like that.
mm.
Um, ah, so we already talked about the post credit scene for this movie. Kind of sucking because it's just the ant playing
Yeah.
the drums again. But
Sure.
the mid credit scene is really good, I thought, and that is um Janet, Hank, Hope, and Scott are all like working out of the back of a van, and they like
Yeah.
need Scott to go into the quantum realm to like get a canister of energy or some shit like that.
Yeah.
So they're like, "Okay, buddy, are you ready?" And he's like, "Yeah, let's do this." And he goes in there, and we go into the quantum realm with Scott, and he's like scooping up the energy stuff, and he's like, "Okay, great, got it. Pull me out, guys. Guys,
Yeah.
hello." And
Yep.
then the camera cuts to outside of the van,
Oh
and all
yeah.
you see is the ash dust particles of the
Yeah.
three of them because they've been Thanos out of existence. I was
Yeah.
like, wow, that is so
That's
good.
devastating, man. I was like, holy crap. And yeah, it makes sense because this Ant-Man and the Wasp movie was uh after the Infinity War movie.
Hmm.
So yeah, because I was like, how are they going to portray this movie? So they did it by doing that. I'm just like, holy cow. Makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense and huge emotional impact too because he lost his family and then he's stuck in the quantum realm. It's like, geez, man.
hey, now that I think about it, when we get to Endgame, doesn't Scott say something that like the quantum realm does have some kind of like time factor? So yeah, I mean, you're even more right about the Janet being stuck in the quantum realm thing. Like, why the hell did she age just normally? That's
Yeah, it's
what the
weird.
hell.
I really think they should have done something where she shows up as a normal young looking Michelle Pfeiffer and then when she comes into our world or something and then they'll give like an explanation like, oh my God, time is catching up to her, and then her face just going you
She's
know.
got the like that scene at the end of Indiana Jones and
Indiana
the
Jones.
Last Crusade. Like
Yeah.
she just ages, 20 years and 20 seconds.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That would have been more plausible for me because it's just like, oh yeah, because time caught up with her. There you go. You know.
yeah, that'd have been intense.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
all right, that's all my notes for Ant-Man and Wasp.
Holy cow.
Shall
Good
we
job,
do?
man.
Thank you. Shall we do some rankings?
Yes.
All right, you want to go first?
I will go first. I'm gonna say this movie for me was not like amazing. Um, thank goodness that you actually gave me like a synopsis again, or else I would not have remembered anything about this movie at all. So, I'm gonna put Ant-Man and the Wasp above Thor. There you go. That's me.
What is that in D tier?
C.
C. Got it.
Yeah.
So where do I put this? When I originally like laid out these movies from memory, I put it in one place. But now that I've watched it again, and after having kind of rant about all this stuff. I feel like maybe I need to punish it a little bit more. Um,
Yes. Punish it.
ah, yeah, it's either gonna go at the top as my first D tier, or it's gonna be the bottom of C. Um, you know what though? Man, I put Thor all the way up there.
You put Thor.
Mm,
This is Thor.
'Cause I have not been assigning mine based on your very helpful rubric of like, would I rather watch this or that?
Mm,
Because I think I'd probably rather watch Ant-Man and Wasp than Thor.
mm.
Okay, fine. By that logic, I'm gonna do exactly what you did. I'm gonna put it right above Thor.
There you go. Yeah.
So
There
yeah,
you go.
my D tier is getting pretty lonely, or
Yeah, I know.
just there's nothing in there at all. Um, all right, ready to guess critics and audience score?
Oh, this one is it's tough for
It's gonna
me.
be surprising.
Really.
Hmm. And feel
Uh,
free, anybody in the chat, Embalmed Apple, Cyborg, Totoro, King, if you're still there, if you would like to guess where the Rotten Tomatoes critics would rank Ant-Man and Wasp, and where the Rotten Tomatoes audience would rank Ant-Man and Wasp, feel free to type it in the chat. No official game here, and there's no prize or anything, but this is just for bragging rights.
and I'm really good at this.
And Chris is actually quite good at this. You even had a
Um,
perfect run once where we did like 3 movies
yeah,
and you got them all.
yeah. Embalmed Apple says I'm bad at guesses. It's okay. Just let us know what your thing is. Totoro says critics B, audience A. So
Wow.
Totoro says audience or critics B and audience A. Okay. I'm gonna say critics B, audience C.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the critics score. The I can't even say it without laughing. The Rotten Tomatoes critics rank Ant-Man and Wasp in A tier.
An A tier?
Yep.
What?
Would you like to guess where it goes?
Uh, I'm gonna say above Ant-Man.
Uh, Also hang on. I think Infinity War is missing from the A tier for the critics. Is Oh, there it is. Sorry, where did you
Sorry
say
about that.
it goes, Chris? That's okay.
Above Ant-Man and below Guardians.
Nope, higher.
Oh, really?
Yep. It's I think really surprising. It's actually above Infinity War. The critics gave a higher score to Ant-Man and Wasp than Infinity War. I think that's blasphemy.
I think that's bullshit.
I mean, then again, though, the critics' score for Infinity War, I think, is really low. Like, I love Civil War, Captain America, and Doctor Strange. I think all those movies are great, but I think Infinity War is way better than those movies. So yeah, I don't know. Critics really had a great time with Ant-Man and Wasp and didn't have any of the complaints that I've vociferously laid out.
Wow.
So yeah. And moving on to the audience score. A little bit less surprising. The Rotten Tomatoes audience puts Ant-Man and Wasp in C tier. Oh man, I forgot they ranked Black Panther in C tier. I was like, wait, what's that doing in there? But yeah,
Wow.
that was one of those spicy ones.
Oh, did I get this right?
Nope. Ant-Man and Wasp is higher than that. It actually So it's
No, no,
audience
no.
C tier.
Yeah, I said C
Oh,
tier though, right?
I got it. Your guess. Yeah, you
Yeah,
guessed
yeah,
C
yeah,
tier. There you
yeah.
go. But it's not in the right position there. It goes up higher. Um,
Wait, I'm
it
still
actually,
stuck. I'm still stuck at that Ant-Man and the Wasp was better than the Avengers Infinity War.
yep. What the F?
That is
Yeah, you're gonna
insane.
feel the same way here. So it goes after Age of Ultron, but ahead of Black Panther.
Fucking kidding me? Really?
Yeah, yeah. The
Really?
audience, Rotten Tomatoes audience, some really hot takes. Like, did we
That
watch the
is
same movies, guys? Like, what's going on here? And
that makes no sense. That makes no sense at all.
yeah, isn't that wild? Um,
Wow.
but while we're here, reveling in the audacity of the audience scores and ratings, um, before we move into the next movie, I think it'd be more interesting to start with the tier rankings from Rotten Tomatoes for this one, and then we'll go into talking about it and we can explain
Sure,
our thinking. So,
sure.
completely without any prep, um, where do you think critics and audiences rank Captain Marvel, starring Brie Larson?
Captain Marvel. Um, critics, you said?
Hmm? Critics and audience.
Oh boy. Oh God. I'm gonna say B,
Okay.
and then B.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna say B and B.
Chat, if you're there, what say ye? If you'd like to play at home and want to guess where Rotten Tomatoes audience and critics rank Captain Marvel, speak now or forever hold your peace.
I'm very curious, cause yeah,
Oh, it's a good
some.
one.
Oh, is it really? Wow.
Oh yeah. This is one of the spicy ones.
Huh.
So we'll start with the critics score. Rotten Tomatoes critics rank Captain Marvel in B tier. Good job, Chris. You
Oh
got it.
yeah, yay.
And care to guess where it goes in B tier?
I'm
Right there at the
gonna
end, or
say no, no, no. I'm gonna say in between Iron Man and Thor.
very, very close, above Iron Man 3.
Oh wow. Huh.
Good guess though. Like you, that was if I was grading this, that would have been an A minus.
Yeah.
Good job. All right, and I don't even have to look. I already know where this goes for the audience. Uh, the Rotten Tomatoes audience tier ranking for Captain Marvel is F tier.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Wow, the
super
first
super
F.
spicy one. The audience hated this movie. It is
Wow.
far and away the lowest ranked Marvel movie. So a little bit of a spoiler there for the fun, but I mean, I've kind of basically already said this a couple times, is that we've got one S tier and one F tier movie in the audience tier sheet. And the reason for that is because the S ranked movie and the F ranked movie are just like at absolute like if you imagine like a distribution curve where like, the things that are like A, B, C, D are all kind of clustered in the middle. And they all have like pretty close scores. Like nothing is um, bigger or lower than anything else by like 1, 2 to 5 percentage points. These ones
Right.
are like 20 to like 10 to 20 points farther away than the next closest thing. So Captain Marvel, I think, is like a 44% score from the audience.
Wow.
Um, and the like next closest Marvel movie is, I don't know, like 63, 65 or something like that.
Wow.
So yeah, this movie just got totally trashed.
Jeez.
Um, yeah, I I think this I really think this movie got review bombed because of trolls, like some just like internet trolls who just like think it's funny to like shit on things and burn things down. Um, Definitely some like legit sexists out there
Right, right.
uh, who you know have a political agenda and don't really care about the movie. And they just want to crap on it because like strong female character. So certainly that's a factor. Um, but I really feel it's kind of like J.L. Collins uses this really good metaphor for the stock market. So when people invest in the stock market, it's kind of this weird thing because it's like, on the one hand, that's something that makes sense to do for investing for retirement, right? You're like, invest in these companies, and when you put your money into the stock market, you actually are getting a piece of that company, and that company actually does have people working for it, making products, creating value in the world, and generating income. However, there's also a part of the stock market that's kind of like gambling, where people are buying stock that they think will in the future become valuable, that that stock value will go up and they'll be able to sell at a high rate and cash out that way. So they don't really care about the company, that whether or not the company's actually functional and making money and it has a long-term future. All they care about is, can I buy this for $50 and then 3 months from now sell it for $200? That's like the gambling thing. And the metaphor that J.L. Collins likes to use is, he says, you've got to imagine it like you're pouring a beer into a glass that's opaque, so you can't see inside of it. And when beer gets poured, there's obviously beer at the bottom, and then there's a foam head at the top. Um, Preferably, you want a little bit of foam, but not a lot. Or in some cases, maybe you don't want any at all. Um, the actual value of the company is the beer, and all that crazy chaos of stock market speculation is the foam. You don't know how much. There's beer in there, and it's full to the top, but you don't know how much of that is foam and how much of it is beer. Could be a lot of beer, a little bit of foam. Could be all
Mhm.
foam. Um, I think the same sort of thing applies to the reviews for something like Captain Marvel. There are, and because it's not the best movie, we're going to get into that and talk a lot about the problems that this movie has. So there are some people who give it a negative review because that's coming from an actual genuine place, not from a nefarious place of like actual critique of the story that I saw, of the movie that I watched. That's the beer. The other group of people, the trolls and the sexists and all these other people who are just like trying to shit on a thing, that's the foam. It's impossible to tell how much of that is what, but it's all mixed up. It's all mixed together. It's not all one of one thing. It's not all one of the other thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my piece there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because when I first watched the reviews on this movie, I remember everyone just like shit on this movie. And the funny thing is, a lot of the people who shit on this movie, the movie hasn't even come out yet. And, people have been giving it negative reviews already. So I'm just like, geez, guys, I know some people have issues with this actress, Brie Larson, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
But even so, you shouldn't review bomb a movie just because you don't like the actress, and you got to
totally.
watch the movie first and then bomb it later with your, legitimate review as to why you don't like it, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, yeah.
yeah, and that's something that I'm gonna do too, because I know there's a lot of controversy about Brie Larson outside of the movie.
Do you know
You know,
why?
there, uh, she's the they're like, at least from my experience, I don't know a whole lot. Like I don't know a lot about Brie Larson, but I do know like at least two of the controversies um, kind of hinge around like two general things. One of them, she's very like outspoken and opinionated about like the patriarchy and misogyny, and needing to fight for women and women's rights, which is important, but
Hmm.
we don't have to put men down to raise women up. Like we can
Right, sure.
raise each other up. And I think a lot of people, and myself included a little bit in some of the things that she says, are definitely like, you know beating men down in order
Right.
to raise women up. And I think
Sure.
that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And
Oh.
she could have been a little bit more tactful in some of the things that she said. There's like a famous or like infamous, really, video of her accepting an award. I don't know what award it was, but she's like wearing a pink dress and she's like really ranting about like we need to stop making movies for crusty old white men or something like that. I don't know.
Oh. Oh.
Um,
Oh.
but I think that pissed a lot of people off. So that's one of the controversies is she's been very outspoken and uh, yeah, not very diplomatic in you know addressing her feelings about her cause. That's one
Sure.
thing. The other
Sure.
thing is, and like I don't know that it's like that there's been like hard confirmation, but there's plenty of like evidence that you can kind of read into. Um, it seems like she was kind of a nightmare to work with on set and like was very difficult for a lot of the other Marvel actors to work with because she's kind of
Uh-huh.
there are you can see interviews where she's like sitting with Chris Hemsworth and Don Cheadle and they're
Yeah, I
talking
saw
about
those.
like doing their stunts and what that's like and Don Cheadle and Chris Hemsworth are kind of being joking and they're like giving mad props to their stunt guys like oh yeah these guys were super great and she gets like very defensive and personal and starts you can tell that there's like this friendly colleague banter that should be happening, but she's taking it really
Yeah.
seriously and personally,
Oh.
and like the two guys are like starting to lean away from her. It's just really awkward to watch,
Right. Right. Right.
and there's some other like rumors and things that have come out that have talked about, yeah, she's kind of difficult to work with. So
Mm. Mm. Mm.
and I don't know Brie Larson. I don't know if any of that's true or not.
You're right.
Um, but I think that those are at least two of the controversies that I'm aware of that have gotten a lot of people up in arms and pissed off at her. But
Mm.
even being aware of that stuff, like I think it's really important to separate the person and their personality from the artwork. Um, to take a really famous classic or infamous classic example, Michael Jackson. There's all kinds of really weird shit that guy did outside of his music, both
Right.
in terms of like his own appearance and dangling his baby out of the balcony window, and um, it's completely well, it's difficult and delicate, but all the pedophilia thing, like all these kids that came out saying like actually that Michael abused me. Don't know if any of that's true or not, but the documentary that's about it is pretty damn compelling.
Yeah.
Um, despite all of that really awful, potentially very disgusting stuff, if it's true, Billie Jean's one of the best songs ever made. Like it's amazing. Thriller's incredible. The entire
Yeah.
album of that is amazing. Like his music is still to this day like it just soul-shakingly good. It's just incredible. And we can separate those things. We can keep those things independent of each other. And it's just at least my personal opinion is I don't think it does a whole lot of good to take one of those things on the outside and force that onto to like have an actor like Brie Larson that let's say you're mad at her and you hate her or whatever, then to go and like shit on this movie. There's so many other
Right.
people that are involved in this movie, and like for me, I can separate those things. Yeah, I don't agree with a lot of her behavior offset, but as we'll get into in a second here, I hope that I've done a good job of like keeping those things separate and have like been as objective as possible to just look at the movie,
Right.
and her performance in it. So I don't
Yeah.
know. That's
Yeah. Apple says sometimes we get tired of being diplomatic. Ducks recover. Back when music videos were mini movies. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Diplomacy can be really frustrating when it's an important cause to you and the world is just not moving on it. I mean, that's something that I have experienced a lot with as being a vegan. I care a lot about animal well-being and animal rights. Um, and they're just horrible atrocities that still happen to animals, but I don't talk about it that much, and it's because I think diplomacy, the the peaceful leaders of history, the Mother Teresa's, the Nelson Mandela's, the Martin Luther King Jr.'s, they really had it right. Because when you get aggressive, I completely get it, because it's so easy to get really frustrated. Like, how can this be happening and nobody cares? You want to get in their face and be like, you need to care about this. Like, what is wrong with you? But when you do that, you make people defensive. They pull away from your cause. This is one of the reasons why I feel really frustrated by a lot of these very violent, like almost terrorist level vegans, because they make the cause, they do damage to the cause, and it also, like, it paints a picture in other people's minds and creates this sort of like prejudice about vegans, like, oh man, vegans, they're the worst. And that's hard for me, because then when I meet people and interact with people, then I am dealing with all these prejudices about, like, oh, he's a vegan. I mean, maybe we need to be careful about what we say, or what, like, no, man, like, I'm not going to push my beliefs and, feelings about this onto you. Like, there's a lot of things in the world that suck and are unfair. The fact of the matter is, though, that people have free will, and we live with a lot of people who can do whatever they want, and it takes a long time for people to change their minds. In fact, a lot of there's a saying that's like, it's something along the lines of the world changes, one old person death at a time, or something like that. You really got to wait for the people who hold beliefs that are just so ingrained about the way that the world should be, that they never change. So you have to wait for them to die, and then their kids, who are a little bit more open-minded, can move it a little bit further forward, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
they kind of get set in their ways. You got to wait for them to die, but their kids are a little bit further along, and it happens really slowly, but it's I think it's a real danger to get violent and to abandon diplomacy because things aren't moving fast enough. There's definitely a time and a place to pick up the stick and beat some ass, but I think that those instances are, well, now I'm into territory where I'm well beyond my ability to offer any advice that I think is actually foolproof in all cases. Now we're really getting into the nuance of, like, well, in this particular case you would do this, in this particular case you do that. But I guess I would just say, I hear you. Sometimes it gets really frustrating being the diplomat and feeling like you're not getting anywhere. Just don't give up, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make. So, I don't know. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully I didn't dig myself into a grave there.
No, you're good, man. You're good. So yeah, like for Captain Marvel, as Brie Larson, for me, I don't know who Brie Larson is. I did not know anything about her agenda. Like for me, like I said this last week, if I were in charge of all superhero movies, I would make them all female-led superhero movies because I love females because I'm a big pervert. I love seeing women, strong women, doing awesome stuff. I don't want to see guys, I don't need to see the Captain America or Iron Man. I want to see Iron Woman and Captain Carter. I want to see strong females. So for me, the concept of this movie is really, really cool. I definitely when this came out, I was like, cool, freaking awesome female strong-led woman. That's great. I'm looking forward to this. That was my mindset of going into this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know who Brie Larson is. I don't really care who she is. She's beautiful. I thought her acting was fine. It was not bad. So when I rate this movie, she has nothing to do with the actress has nothing to do with my critique of this film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so speaking of which, I've got a bunch of notes. If you want, we can do the same thing. We'll go through point by point and kind of like hash it out together.
Yeah.
And the very first point we'll start with is Brie Larson, and her acting. apparently she's an Oscar winner. She's an Academy Award winning actress. For her work on a movie called I think The Room or Room, not the infamous Room by what's his name? Um, Tommy Wiseau. The
Oh,
uh oh hi Mark, that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that
I
thing.
didn't hit
Um,
her. I didn't, or something like that.
I did not. Oh
Oh
hi
yeah, yeah,
Mark.
yeah.
A different room. I
Yeah.
haven't seen it. Apparently, it's really good. She won an Oscar for it. Which is kind of surprising to me because I don't think she's very good in this. I think she's not horrible. She's not bad, but for being the lead, her acting feels kind of stiff and melodramatic and one note, pretty flat to me. Throughout the movie, it's not like awful or anything, but um, there are other actors in the movie. Most of the other actors actually that I think are more compelling.
Mhm, mhm.
Obviously, Samuel L. Jackson's amazing in everything that he's in. He's in this
Yeah.
as Nick Fury. He's really good. Um, her best friend, I don't know the actress's name, but the character is Rambeau.
Rambo. Yeah.
Um, I liked her more than uh, Brie Larson's character. Like I thought, man, she should have been Captain Marvel. She's the scenes where she is emoting and she doesn't have that many scenes unfortunately, but the scenes that
Mm.
she's in, like she's really tearing it up. And there's one scene in particular where she's really getting into it, but Brie Larson is just looks kind of stoic. But anyway, so I don't know. I wasn't super impressed with her acting in this, but by no means bad, just kind of stiff. But it sounds like it didn't really bother you, Chris. You were pretty good with it.
Yeah, I mean, it was fine. It wasn't anything like mind blowing, nor was it like absolutely horrible. It was just she's just doing her thing. And again, I'm not really a Brie Larson fan, so I haven't seen her in much of anything except this movie.
Yeah. Um, So more about the like actors and the different actor dynamics. And actually, I forgot Jude Law was in this. He's actually he's he's a good actor, and I mean he's good in this, but his character is kind of lame. Like he's a mentor character that eventually ends up being like one of the bad guys. And I think again, shitty villain syndrome. Um, but so he's like her mentor, and there are these early scenes where they're like sparring together, and he's trying to train her, and I just felt like there was no chemistry between those two. And
Mm,
that's important. Like if you have the protagonist and the mentor character, you need to have some chemistry there. Like they need it needs to be pretty obvious to the audience that there's a powerful relationship here, and it just really wasn't. Um, so I don't know. And then I would say kind of the same thing, but to a lesser degree. Uh, Captain Marvel and Nick Fury, or and this is something that's kind of confusing. Her name in the movie changes like several times. She's Captain Marvel as a hero. That's who she becomes. But she's a human, and her human name is Carol Danvers.
mm,
But when she's like this alien character, like she's at the beginning of the movie, we meet her as Veers, Vers, and she's this member of the Kree alien intergalactic species or whatever. Um, and so she's got like all these different names throughout the movie, and so I'm gonna kind of like use them interchangeably. So just FYI about that.
yeah.
But so Veers and Fury, I also didn't think they had like a ton of chemistry. They have a couple of moments that are actually pretty charming, but some of them feel real forced. Like there's a scene where they're like flying in a ship, escaping from like some base or something, and they're like, oh, that was pretty crazy. And she says something like, I won't tell your boss if you don't tell mine. And he's like, oh, and she's smiling, and and me as the audience member, I'm feeling like that wasn't funny. Like I'm not laughing. What the hell? Like it's one of those things that just like you feel emotionally detached from the characters when you know when they're experiencing something that you are not experiencing from the very same stimulus. She tells a
Right.
joke that's not funny. He laughs. Dissonance. So yeah, kind of that's how I felt about that. Okay, so here's something that I think is interesting that we'll talk about a couple times here. At the very beginning of the movie, the Jude Law character, and I can't, he's got a really weird alien name, so I'm just gonna call him Jude Law.
Sure.
Um, he is sparring with Danvers, and trying to teach her like, the what is presumably the message of the movie, the theme of the movie, the thing that she's going to need to learn by the end of the movie in order to grow and change the person. He's basically telling her to like control your impulses. Stop using this, points to her heart. Start using this, points to her head. Don't let your emotions override your judgment. And then later in the movie, uh, Nick Fury says, going with your gut against orders, hard thing to do, but keeps you human. So there's this kind of like back and forth going on between like using her head versus using her heart. And they touch on it a couple of times, but then by the end of the movie, they don't really do anything with it. So it's just kind of like a big nothing burger. Don't know what that note was. Oh yeah, okay. So this is a negative that I wrote towards the beginning of the movie. So we are after the sparring scene. Jude Law and Carol or Veers and the rest of the like Kree super soldiers go on this mission. And while they're in the ship and they're flying out in space, there's this like massive plot dump. Like they tell us about the Kree civilization and the Supreme Intelligence thing. And there's also this other group of aliens called the Skrull, and they're like expanding across the galaxy or something. Oh, and by the way, Veers, she's like a victim of that expansion. And oh, she's got amnesia too. It just bam, 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 bam. Like all of this stuff happens, and it's like really hard to keep up with. And thank God I had the subtitles on, because otherwise I could not keep straight like whose name was what and who the Kree were and who the Skrull were, and it's super confusing. But I don't know if you remember that, Chris. Did you remember being like overwhelmed or confused about all the like space politics and like who was who and what faction was what?
No, I don't remember a lot any I don't remember a lot
They're the
about this
best.
movie. Yeah, it's just I remember her flying around in space, and the only good part of the movie is that I really like how the Skrulls ended up being the good guys versus the bad guys. I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat, you know. That's it kind of subverted my expectations in a positive way. And I actually like that. But other than that, I thought Captain Marvel was way too OP for me. It's just she's kind of like a Superman
Yeah,
character. I'm just like,
it's
you
just
know,
not interesting.
yeah. I mean, again, nothing to do with Brie Larson. It's just the character is just, she has a damper on her neck and she breaks it, and then she becomes
Mm-hmm.
raw,
Yeah.
super powerful and just kills everything and everyone and or defeats everything and everyone. But I'm getting ahead of you, so yeah, please
Yeah,
go
no, no, that's totally fine, man. Um,
on.
yeah, so like they go on this first mission, and even now I'm still kind of confused about what the hell was going on. They were like trying to extract a spy or something, but then they're on this weird, like somewhat desolate planet with like maybe refugees, but then they're like, are they enemies? Are they allies? And then they end up being like the bad guys in disguise. I don't know. It's really super confused, especially at the very beginning. Like this is like one of the first scenes of the movie, and it's you just have like no idea what the hell's going on. Um, and I guess in the long run, it doesn't really matter that much, but you don't know that as an audience member watching this. You don't know like, is this important? Should I be knowing who the hell these people are? And so you're trying to pay attention and to understand, but it's all happening so fast, and the scenes are really dark too, so you can't really tell like who's who. It feels kind of like a big mess, but thankfully, like that, once we get past that, then the like actual plot of the movie begins, and it's pretty easy to follow.
Right.
Um, da, 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 da. So, okay, so I think one of the complaints going like back outside of the movie to like the politics surrounding it, one of the big complaints about this movie that I heard a lot was that this movie is like this very cliched story about like the woman getting sidelined and marginalized in this like male dominant area, and all the dudes are portrayed as these misogynistic a-holes. And there is some of that in the movie for sure, where like they show this training montage where she's like when she is back on Earth, she has joined a branch of the military, presumably the Air Force, because she's a fighter pilot. But I don't know if it's like some space division or something because there's also spaceships and shit. But I believe she's Air Force fighter pilot. So she's like in boot camp training, and she's like the only girl, and there are all these other dudes there, and they're making fun of her and saying that she's like too weak. I think I've got a couple notes here. They're like, yeah, you're too emotional and weak. Oh yeah, and then there's this one scene where he goes like, you know why they call it a cockpit, right? um, yeah. So that stuff, like, I totally get why that's like, ugh, come on, like, do something more interesting. Like, that's just, even if that's a real problem, it's cliched and just not interesting. Like, that character, that's all that character does. He's just like this cutout of like a male misogynist. However, I will fight back and defend the movie. The people who complain that this whole movie is that it's not. Like, it's that one scene, and then I really looked and I didn't find like anything else in here that um, you know, takes that sort of like cookie cutter approach to this topic. So I mean, haters gonna hate, I guess, but that one scene aside, that could have a little bit more nuance and interest to it, and if it wasn't so kind of cliched and stereotypical, would have been more interesting. It is a little bit eye rolling, but I mean, that's a tiny little piece of this whole movie. So, yeah, that's that. So this is something that I put as a plus that I thought was pretty cool. So Veers has amnesia. She doesn't really like know where she came from at the beginning of the movie. She assumes that she's Kree, and she has these kind of like flashes of memory, but she doesn't really know what's going on with those. The mission that she goes on with Jude Law and the other characters goes totally sideways. She gets captured by the Kree, the enemies. And the Kree are these like shape-shifting aliens. They can turn into other people and look like anybody that they've gotten a look at. And what they're doing is they've got her captured, and she's like upside down, and they've jacked into her mind, and they're looking at her memories. And it's actually really cool and really clever. And the filmmakers take their time for this sequence, and it really pays off. It's because it's really interesting. You're seeing these like key moments of her life, and so you're getting some backstory for the protagonist. The protagonist is growing and learning because she's also seeing those things. So that's all fantastic. And then on top of that, you're hearing these voices that are like analyzing what's happening. They're going like, wait a minute, what was that thing right there? Rewind. And you're like, that's weird. What's happening here? Eventually, as you know, they like, this goes on long enough that you start to put it together, and the camera pulls out of the memory, and you see her kind of like rigged up, and they're like obviously jacking into her memories. And it's like, oh wow, that was pretty clever. That was pretty cool. I don't know if you remember that scene, Chris. Did you?
Yeah, I
What
remember
would you
her
think?
upside down, and then I remember it was kind of like a Mr. Incredible moment, where she was like captured.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but other than that, I don't remember a lot about it.
Well, yeah. The lead into that was that kind of like cool memory thing. At least the
Yeah,
way they did that, I thought was pretty neat. I liked it
nice,
quite a bit.
nice.
Um, and then speaking of what you just mentioned, like, she's kind of chained up, Mr. Incredible style, and she's got these like metal gauntlets that are kind of like blocking her powers on her, because that's how like most of her power comes from her fists, where she's
Hmm.
like, charges up this energy from her body, and then she can like punch things hard and shoot laser, not really like energy blasts. Um, but they know that, so they've like put these gloves, these cuffs on her, and that's cool. That's interesting because she spends the entire time on, like, when she breaks out and she's trying to escape from the ship, she can't use her, fist guns. So she's having to improvise and be clever, and that's always interesting.
Yeah,
Anytime you have a scene where you've taken away a superhero's power and you need to have them do clever things to figure out how to solve the problem, you're always going to get a thumbs up from me. I love that stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so this one's a question mark. I don't know if this is good or bad. This went over my head. I don't know if it has meaning. Anybody in the chat, if you know what's going on with this, let me know. But after Veers escapes from the Kree, for some reason they're near Earth, and so she plummets down to the planet, and she crashes into a Blockbuster Video, because this movie takes place in the 90s. And when she's in there, she kind of like gets up, dusts herself off, and then she like gets real angry, and she shoots a blast at this cardboard cutout of Arnold Schwarzenegger in a tuxedo with Jamie Lee Curtis kind of on his arm. It's like a promotional cutout for True Lies, and
True
she
lies.
blasts his head off, so it's gone. And then it's just like this smoldering, you know, where his head used to be with Jamie Lee Curtis there.
Uh-huh.
And it
Uh-huh.
seems like it's that there's something there, like that was some kind of like message or like an inside joke or something, but I don't know what it is. So I don't know if
Huh.
anybody else knows, but let me know
That mo
in the comments if you know what the
that
hell
movie's
that was
awesome.
about.
I love that movie.
Oh yeah, True Lies. Yeah, that's a real good movie.
Yeah.
Um, a plus here, something that I liked is so the authorities arrived because there's some like crazy space lady blowing stuff up at the Blockbuster, and the authorities happen to be Nick Fury and his rookie, who is Agent Coulson. And it's apparently like Agent Coulson's like first day or first week on the job or something. I felt like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see him, you know, being the rookie and like, you know, real green
Yeah.
to this job.
Yeah.
So I thought that was fun. Um, Another thumbs up. Really cool scene with like the old lady on the train. So after she arrives at Blockbuster, one of the Kree, who remember are shapeshifters, arrives and steals something. I can't remember what it is. It's like a thumb drive or something. It's some kind of MacGuffin. I don't even remember what it does. Steals it and runs away. And so then this chase scene begins where Veers is chasing the Kree who stole the thing, and Nick Fury and Agent Coulson are chasing both of them. She chases this guy onto like a train, and Agent Coulson and Nick Fury are in this like vehicle like, speeding after them. And inside the train, as they're getting on the train, Veers like bumps into this old lady, but it's like gentle with her, and then gets on the train and is like looking for this Kree. And because the Kree can transform into anybody, it's really hard to spot them. But then she sees the same old lady on the train, and it's like that's the giveaway. Bam!
Yeah.
Punches the old lady. The old lady, like everybody on the train goes like they gasp like, oh my god. But then the old lady like goes "Argh!" and then starts fighting and doing all this like crazy kung fu shit, like with
Yeah.
all these like wild acrobatics, and
Yeah.
it was pretty awesome. I thought that was a lot of fun. Did you like that scene, Chris?
Yeah. That was cool. Again, like all the fighting scenes, all the, choreographs, I'm all into that shit. So I love all that.
Yeah, good fight scenes are fun.
Yeah.
Um, so they're battling on the train, and then another really cool thing happens. Nick Fury and Agent Coulson in the car are trying to keep up with the train, and as they're going on the radio, Agent Coulson calls in and says like, "Hey, why did you leave me? Nick, I'm still back here. Or Agent Fury, I'm still back here." And Nick looks at the Agent Coulson in the passenger seat, and it's one of the Kree. And so
Yeah.
then he's like starting to fight that guy in the car, and the car like spins out of control and crashes, and then his uh, I don't know, transmogrified disguise comes down and reveals the green alien, and Nick is like, "Whoa, what the?" I thought that was really cool. I didn't see that coming. I thought that was a pretty fun little twist. I got a pet peeve here. A tiny little pet peeve. Not really a mark against this movie. Like I'm not going to take any points off of it, but it's something that I see in all these, like in every single movie, and it really annoys me. You constantly have characters getting onto the roof of something, like on the roof of a bus or the roof of a
Uh-huh.
train or even the roof of like a building. And these rooftops are never dirty. They're always like spotless. And if you've spent any time like actually out in the world climbing onto something that's like a ceiling or a roof or something, it is filthy up there. Like that never gets cleaned.
Mm.
And even the in the instances where it does get like some kind of attention, some kind of cleaning, like the run the bush, the car wash or whatever, that never gets as clean as like the sides or the undercarriage.
Right.
I've never gone on top of something and not had my hands completely black afterwards because there's
Sure.
just so much dirt and grime and stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just not as sexy as getting up there and fighting and not being covered in grime and gross stuff. But I don't know. It always annoys me how clean the roofs of things are. So
You're right. 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 Right.
we already talked about the Agent Coulson doppelganger, which is really cool. All right, I got a negative point here. Oh yeah. So eventually, Veers defeats the guy who has the thing that she's after, and then I think that points her to like she needs to go find this bar where her old friend used to hang out or whatever. There's something about this bar that'll like that's the next breadcrumb to lead to the next thing. So that's where she goes, and somehow Nick Fury figures that out, and he meets her there. And there's kind of a standoff where she needs proof from him that he's not a Skrull, which is the green transmorphing aliens. And the way that shakes out is she makes him give her a brief backstory and some like weird fact that a Skrull wouldn't know. So he says, you know, like, well, if toast is cut diagonally, I can't eat it. And then she goes like, okay, cool, you're legit, you're on the up and up. And I was just like, what? Like, how does that prove anything? Like, one, she doesn't know him, so how could she possibly know that? Like, how is she even confirming anything that he's saying? Like, she's never met this person before, so he could be like completely making up some totally made up backstory and a totally made up weird fact about toast. And she's not gonna have any idea how to whether that's legit or not. But she just
Right.
goes with it. And it's like, yep, okay, cool, checks out, bro. Um, I thought that was dumb. Oh, and then he turns the tables on her and is like, okay, how do I know you're not a Skrull? And she takes her hand and like blasts the jukebox and then goes like this. Um,
Can
that
scrolls do
also
that?
doesn't prove anything. Yeah, exactly. How does Nick
Yeah.
Fury like he's like this is all new crazy alien shit to him. Like he doesn't know what these people can do. Um, so how does that prove anything? And on top of that, she's just so smug about it. This is like one of the things that I kind of don't like about the Captain Marvel character as portrayed in this movie is she's pretty smug about a lot of stuff, and she's like, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but I think she falls into the category of the one of the big complaints that I think a lot of people have with a lot of female you know, heroes lately is they are just naturally super. They're just awesome,
Mm,
but they don't believe in themselves.
mm.
That's the problem. Is they other people around them don't believe in them enough, so they don't believe in themselves. But they don't really need to grow or change or do anything other than like realize, hey, I'm fucking awesome. Um, and that's kind of like the growth arc, and you'll actually see a little bit of that in this movie. We'll get to in a bit. So, and I mean that's hard to relate to. I mean that's one of my big peeves with Thor. And you know, one of the reasons why I didn't like Thor for most of the Thor movies is because he's like that too. He's just this arrogant, smug butthead who doesn't think he needs to change, and she's kind of giving off some of those vibes in this movie too. Not quite as bad as Thor, but still kind of like in that neighborhood. I don't know.
Mm.
Thoughts, Chris?
Um, yeah, I don't have a lot of thoughts on this. Uh, yeah,
That's
like
fine.
her character is um like I said, I want all my female I want all characters to be female. But like you pointed it out, yeah, she's very smug and I don't like that very much. Um, yeah, but I don't have much to say on this area
Sure.
because I don't remember a lot of this movie.
Well, I'll give you another example that I have in my notes here. There's this moment later where, uh, and it's another thing that I'll get to in a second. They end up like captured in Nick Fury and Veers end up captured in this little room, and there's like this little touchpad on the wall that controls the door. And
Mm,
so they're trying to get out of this room, but Nick's card doesn't work, or his thumbprint doesn't work. But he remembers that earlier, and like a couple scenes ago, one of the guards checked his ID and like held his ID. So then he uses some tape, he puts it on the card, and uses and peels the tape off, and the tape like lifts the fingerprint of the guard off of the ID, and then he
mhm.
puts it on the little number pad, and it opens. Like, yeah, awesome, we did it. I'm smart. Like I got us out of this situation. And they get to like the next lock, and he's about to do, and she just blasts it, and then it opens. And he's
Mm,
like, "You could have done that the whole time." And she's just like so super smug about it, and she's like,
mm,
I don't know, I wanted to see you struggle or something like that.
mm.
Um, and it just like it sucks. Like I don't know, it makes it's not it doesn't land the same way that when the scene that we talked about in Infinity War with like when everybody's on the battlefield and things are going really crazy and it looks like they're getting into trouble and then Wanda shows up and blows everybody away and then Okoye
Yeah,
is like, where the hell were you all this time?
right.
um that's great, like that's totally fine. And, Wanda's not smug about it.
Yeah,
It it doesn't demean the other heroes that she's got this like different power level. But in the Captain Marvel scene, like it does really diminish the uh you know the usefulness of Nick Fury. Like okay,
sure.
well if you can just blast your way through everything, why do you even need him around? Like,
Right.
and his way of solving that problem was way more clever, like from a storytelling perspective, than just shoot it. Like that's just boring. So
Right.
I don't know. I like that fails on a couple of different levels for me. Less interesting storytelling, put down another hero and make the current hero less interesting and more arrogant. Like,
Yeah.
a loss, in my opinion.
Mm,
Um, okay, so another negative. After Veers and Nick meet at the bar and for whatever reason trust each other, aren't Skrulls anymore. Their next stop is this secret base in the desert. And Nick knows about the base. They're trying to find this like Pegasus program or something. And Veers has figured out that it's at this base, but she doesn't really know what the Pegasus program is, so they're going to go check it out. And so they pull up, and it's gated. There's like a booth with like a hand scanner, all this stuff, and there's a guard on an intercom. It's like, hey, give me the password or whatever. And Nick Fury validates who he is and his password, and they go, okay, come on in, director or whatever. They open the gate and he drives in. So that happens no problem. And then like once they get inside and park the car, then they get arrested because then the soldiers appear and like, hey, what the hell are you guys doing here? Like, what's going on? Like, let me see some ID. Like, okay, and then they arrest them, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like once they're inside, suddenly they get detained, but and they revoke Nick Fury's access. Now he can't get through any of the doors, but they've just let him in, uh, and it's never explained. So I don't know. I thought that was pretty dumb or sloppy.
mm,
Um, Next thing, a positive. Brie Larson on the phone after discovering her past. Oh, yeah, I vaguely remember this. So most of her acting in the movie, as I mentioned, I was not super impressed with. But there is this one scene where, um, she's on the phone, and I don't remember what she was doing or who she was talking to, but she's like realizing about her past. And okay, so it's right after she and Fury find the files in the archives that reveal Dr. Lawson, who's this like woman she keeps seeing, is actually a Kree named Marvel, that developed this light speed tech but died. There was this cover up, and Veers finds a photo of herself, puts it all together. So like this Pegasus program was being run by this person, Dr. Lawson, who she has been seeing for a long time, like in her visions. And she finally puts all the pieces together and realizes, like, okay, this is, or most of the pieces, this is who I am, and she has this like kind of a emotional moment that was actually pretty good. Like I felt for her in that moment. It's like, okay, cool. She's like actually coming around here.
nice.
So thumbs up for that. Another thing that I thought was really cool is that the Skrull infiltrate Shield. So there's a certain point when they're in that base where, like, I think Fury calls for backup or something, and the Shield agents arrived, and the director is there, the director of Shield, and he's like, "Good work, Nicholas." Yeah, and earlier Nick had said that nobody calls him Nicholas. Like people call him Nick, people call him. Well, actually, his
Right.
mom calls him Nick. Everybody else calls him Fury. Nobody calls him Nicholas. And so this guy says that, and Fury kind of like looks at him askance. Is like, what the hell? And then Nick goes like, yeah, real good. We'll do this one just like we did in Havana. And the director goes like, yeah, Havana. And obviously, this was like a little litmus test for Nick, where there was no Havana mission that they ever worked on. So he knows this guy's not who he says he is. Leads him down the rabbit chase. But I thought it was cool. I was like, oh wow, that's actually pretty neat that there's one of these Kree guys is like infiltrated all the way to the highest level. So this is starting to get into one of the like overall things that I actually really like about this movie. Is as an X-Files fan, there's a lot of X-Files type juju in this movie. Movie
Cool.
takes place in the 90s. It's about these different alien races and government cover-ups and secret bases in the desert, and they don't like really lean into it. It doesn't feel like, oh my god, this is like X-Files the Marvel, or it's like a Marvel movie, the X-Files version. It's not quite like that, but there's definitely um enough of the like DNA of X-Files in this that I noticed it and appreciate it. So I
Cool.
thought that was pretty cool.
Nice.
Um, this one is like mostly a plus, but there's a little bit of a negative here too. I think because this movie takes place in 1990, and Samuel L. Jackson was much younger in 1990, they've de-aged him for this movie. And for
Oh,
the
yeah.
most part, it looks awesome. Like
Pretty good.
yeah, he looks really good.
Yeah.
There are just a couple of scenes, and it's not it doesn't have to do with the special effects. I don't think it's really just like the way that they shot it, where like it's like a full body shot of him running, and you can tell he's like his knees are like really struggling to keep up, or like where he's kind of crouched and he's getting up to stand, and you can tell like I don't know how old Sam Jackson is, but
He's
as
up there.
somebody who's nowhere near that old, I know like your knees start
Yeah.
giving out pretty young.
Yeah.
So in those moments, it's like he looks like he's 40, but he's running like he's 60.
Right.
Um, but for the most part, he actually looks pretty good. All right, so this one I didn't really put this as positive or negative, but Jude Law ends up being a villain, which I had mentioned before. Uh, and one thing that I would say about this is just like an interesting plug for Blockbuster Blueprint. If you read that book, one of the things that I say in that book is you have to watch out for the mentors, because the mentors in a lot of stories end up being antagonists. Usually, if there's like a twist where one of the good guys ends up actually being one of the bad guys, it's almost always the mentor who's been secretly like pulling the strings all along. Um, same sort of thing happens in the original Iron Man. Obadiah, who is like Tony's mentor, who's like helps him run the company while after his dad died. He's the mentor that ends up by the end of the movie actually being the antagonist, who was orchestrating all the bad stuff the whole time. So it happens over and over and over again, and this was just another case of that. But this one was not quite that interesting. Okie dokie. And I'm just gonna keep going through this, Chris. At any time, jump in if you want to interrupt me or say like, "Oh, I've got some things to say about that." Just stop me. But I'm gonna try to just rifle through since we're running pretty long here. Oh my gosh, really long. Back to my notes. Okay, so and actually, I'm gonna filter some of these. I'm gonna pick the more interesting ones. Oh yeah. So okay, this is a big one that I thought was pretty stupid. So we find out that these Kree, these green creatures that can turn into other, transform into other people, they've been the bad guys this whole time. We find out actually they're just trying to find this technology that Veers's her mentor, well, I guess she's got two mentors, but Dr. Lawson, her deceased mentor, she was developing this technology to help the Kree or help the Skrulls escape the Kree, because they're actually been persecuted. So she thinks that they've been trying to get a weapon, but really they're just trying to get away. They're just trying to get like to their own homeworld. And their reasoning is that they need this technology to get like a ship with a fast enough engine that can take them where the Kree can't reach them. And I just like facepalm with this, because their ships like flying around all over the galaxy to like all these different planets. Like up to this point, nobody's ever mentioned that there's like any sort of limitation on how far ships can go. It just seems like it's a given that any part of the galaxy, like you could just fly through one of those gates, these like hexagonal gates where they just sort of fly through and portal to some other place.
Oh, right.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's never mentioned in the movie that like this is a factor at all, and then just out of nowhere, there's like, oh yeah, we can eventually get away from them if we just have this thing that can take us far enough. Like, what? That was pretty dumb.
Mm.
Um, so I mentioned this a little bit before, this idea of like the female superhero just like needing to believe in herself, like that's her only thing. There's this scene where uh, Danvers' friend Rambeau, her like fellow pilot in the Air Force, is kind of like giving her a pep talk because Danvers is like, I don't even know who I am, and she basically says, you're the woman risking her life to do the right thing. My best friend who supported me as a mother and a pilot when no one else did. You're smart and funny and a huge pain in the ass. And you were the most powerful person I knew, way before you could shoot fire from your fist. Do you hear me? Um, and this is like the moment where like in most stories where it's kind of there's a downbeat where the hero doesn't feel like they can really do it. They don't have enough strength to go into the finale and like save the day. Um, and so they need some kind of like pep talk to realize in their bones the core lesson and the moral of the story. And this is that moment here, but it really just doesn't land. Because things have kind of been all over the place up to this point. It was like, well, wait a minute, was it about like controlling your emotions, using your head instead of your heart, or is it like what Nick was saying about going with your gut? And she hasn't really been like growing or changing anything. She's just been kind of like chasing this,
Mhm, mhm.
this breadcrumb trail. And then here it's just like, no, 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 fuck all that shit. You're awesome just the way you are. You just need to believe in yourself. And then she does, and then she goes and like kicks all this ass. I don't know. Didn't feel like very interesting or well paid off. Um, uh, that's not worth talking about. This is a little thing that I thought was kind of stupid. There's a scene where they're like, all the heroes are in this ship and they're leaving Earth's atmosphere, and Nick says like, "Oh man, is this normal space turbulence?" And they're like barely moving. Like he says it as though it's like shit's going crazy, but they're all just kind of
Mm.
like, it doesn't look like they're, yeah, I don't know. I thought that was stupid.
Mhm.
Um, there's also a thing about gravity, but I don't want to get into that. Um, oh, this was a thing too. I noticed there were quite a few scenes in this movie that where the lighting was really dark and it was actually really hard to see.
Mm.
Um, so that kind of sucked. Um, well, that's nah. Let's not talk about that. I think I've kind of already made my point there. Oh, do you remember the cat? The cat that's
I
actually a
did not like the
Florican?
cat. I did not
Yeah.
like the cat. The cat just came out of
Tell me
like
about
left
this.
field, and
Mm-hmm.
then the way the cat gave, Nick Fury his blind eye, I thought that was so fucking stupid. I did not like
Yep.
that at all. And then all of a sudden this cat is like an alien creature that can just magically just kill your obstacles. And I did not like that
Um,
at not one bit. It just came out of left field, and I did not like it. I don't have much more to say about that. It's just I and it doesn't really does it play a big part in the story? I can't remember at all. I just remember that creature didn't that creature eat something that was really radioactive or
Tesseract.
some shit like it ate the Tesseract?
Yep.
Oh.
Because that's the like the MacGuffin of the movie. They've been after this
Oh,
core the whole
sure.
time, and
Oh, I
that's what
see.
it is. And yeah, the cat ends up eating it at one point for like safekeeping.
Yeah, yeah. So,
And then
yeah,
the post credit scene is the cat hacking up a fur ball, but instead of a fur ball or hairball, it's the Tesseract.
oh. God, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. But yeah, completely agree with you, Chris. I thought it was dumb. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And what a lame way for Nick Fury to lose his eye.
Oh yeah, that's so stupid. I thought it was like some badass like op that gone wrong or something, but it was a stupid fucking cat. It's so dumb.
And they had set it up, I think, in an earlier movie where somebody asked him about it, and he says something like, or somebody says something like, don't you trust me? And then he says, the last time I trusted somebody, I lost an eye. So I was like, ooh, there's going to be an interesting story there. And then in this movie, the way they close that loop is he picks up the cat and says something like, Now be nice. I'm trusting you not to scratch me.
Mm,
And so like, oh, that's the someone that he trusted that caused him to lose an eye? Like,
yeah, that's dumb. I don't like it.
yeah.
I don't like it.
Um, and I think that's really all that's worth talking about here. I've got some other things, but then we've already been going for a really long time, and I'm getting kind of pooped. Um, so yeah, Captain Marvel on the whole, it has some things that actually I really like. I don't think it deserves anywhere near as much of the hate that it got.
Mm. Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it's not terrible. It's not amazing, but yeah. So I don't know. What were your final thoughts on Captain Marvel, Chris?
Um, oh, just to add a little bit about the whole female empowerment
Hmm,
characters that
please.
they don't really have that much development. I find that Mulan, the new action release Mulan, it suffered from this.
I didn't see that
Uh,
one.
well, to be super honest, I didn't see it either, but I've seen a lot of reviews that she doesn't have a lot of character development. Is like the chi is within her all this time, and all she needed to do was just believe in herself. And same thing
Mm,
with Rey from, Star Wars. It's like
mm,
all of a sudden she just has the power,
she's
and
good
it's
at
just like,
everything.
yeah, there's no real journey. There's no real like trying to attain this power, when it's already inside you. So I think Captain Marvel kind of like based on what you said, it kind of suffers from that boringness of the female having this power. I want to see how doesn't matter if they're female or not or male or female. It's just I want to see them grow and actually have like a meaning behind attaining their powers, and like see Mulan, Rey from Star Wars, Captain Marvel. It's just boring. Boring is the word for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like I said, this movie wasn't bad. The character wasn't awful for me. It was just kind of eh, it is what it is. And remember how you said, what did you say? Vision. Vision is just way too strong. We had to figure out a way to keep him not fighting in the airport scene, right?
Yep.
Same here. In Endgame, they took her out of the fucking world so that
Yeah.
she has nothing to do until she comes back and fucks, Thanos' ship up and then, does a lot of damage. Which, it's I get it, they have to balance her out because she's just again way too these Superman type characters, they're just way too damn powerful and it's just boring. It's just boring. I find, uh, I mean, I'm gonna get a lot of hate, but I find Superman, like kind of boring because they're super all powerful. Oh, but his weakness is kryptonite. Fine, yes, I get it. But overall, they're just like beef and powerful. But unlike Batman, Batman he's a human. He has flaws. He can be killed. So it's just like you give me Captain Marvel. What are you gonna do with her? And kudos for Marvel being able to do something with her, but I just find her not as a really interesting character at all. When I watch this movie, I'm just like, okay, this is her origin story, but it's a boring one at that. I don't find it
Mm,
interesting at all. So that's my take on it. I don't um I, a great I love female characters, heroines. I want to see more. It's just please make it more interesting and not boring. Huh.
yeah. Yeah, it's really hard to relate to those Superman characters that have like that are just invincible and have all these powers and
Yeah,
don't struggle. It's like,
yeah,
okay, it's
yeah,
hard to relate and it's not interesting. It's really interesting when you're like when you see a character who's in a situation where you go, man, this character is up against insurmountable odds. How in the hell are they going to get out of this situation? But if you take
yeah.
somebody who's like, this is the most powerful being in the universe, and you put them in a situation like, well, there's no drama here. Like, obviously, they're going to just completely wreck whatever obstacles in front of them.
Right, right. So yeah, I put this in above above the Dark World. Mainly I just find it kind of boring. I'm probably never going to watch
Mm,
this again unless I'm watching it chronologically if I one day I just want to watch all the movies again, then I'll probably watch this. But other than that, I'm most likely not going to be watching this at all. The poster is fucking
Sure.
cool though. I love the
Yeah,
poster.
I agree.
She looks great. The
Captain
suit
Boo would
looks
be proud.
awesome. Yeah. So yeah, Michael, where do you rank this?
Well, let's see here. Um, yeah, I think you're getting in the right zone there. I think I'd put this in C tier below Captain America First Avenger. I really don't like putting things in D tier, apparently.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's where that's gonna live for me.
Well, wow. F is really bad. F is like Iron Man 3 bad. It's not as bad as Iron Man 3.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
not
boring,
by a long
but
shot.
Iron Man 3 is like a big fuck you to me. It's like, uh-huh, like Captain Marvel wasn't a fuck you to me. It was
Right.
like it's it doesn't it's not horrible. It's just kind of boring. Hmm.
Right. It's like, somebody tells you a story and you're like, that wasn't that interesting. But Iron Man 3 is like somebody's telling you a story and then in the middle of it, they spit in your face, flip you off, blow a huge fart, and then walk away. You're like,
Yeah.
What the hell?"
Yeah, 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 yeah. Ugh. All right. Cool. Awesome. Michael, awesome job like
It.
analyzing all two movies, both Ant-Man and the Wasp and Captain Marvel. I want to apologize that I don't remember any of these movies, especially Captain Marvel. So you had to do a lot of the heavy lifting on both these movies. So I absolutely apologize. Oh
No,
man,
no,
but
no problem.
good job,
I
dude.
apologize for being so verbose and talkative. I know I went on pretty long there.
No, no,
I'm
no.
starting to get bored of myself.
No, I think that's great. You put in a lot of work, and totally appreciate that. So yeah, I think this is awesome. I'm still very shocked that this is at F. But it is what it is, I guess. Holy cow! Do you know if there's going to be a Marvel 2 or Captain Marvel 2?
Yes, but because the reception to this one was so negative, I
Uh-huh.
think they're like kind of rebranding it to the Marvels. Like they're because I think there's a couple
Oh,
other characters that are
yeah,
in the Captain
yeah,
Marvel universe.
right.
So yeah, there is a sequel, but it's not Captain Marvel. It's like
The
Captain Marvel
Marvels.
plus these other characters
Yeah,
under the
yeah.
Marvels banner, which I think is coming
Got
out
it.
next year or something.
Yeah, got it, got it. Well, cool. Awesome, man. Well, again, awesome job, Michael. And thank you guys so much for hanging out with us, Totoro, Apple. Thank you, King Cass, Cyborg. Thank you guys all so much for hanging out with me and Michael, and just listening to us chat about the MCU movies, which is a lot of fun. And I apologize. Again, I don't remember anything about the movies that I don't really like. So for me, it's just I just rank them, and it's boring or not boring. But Michael, you did such an awesome job, like actually deep diving into every one of them. And on Sunday, we will be reviewing one of my favorite movies, Endgame, Infinity War. Oh, what is it? It's called Avengers Endgame. Yeah, that is going to be awesome. I cannot wait to hear your analysis of Endgame. Um,
I'll
that
try not to disappoint.
Nah, yeah, yeah, no, you're
And
not
I'm
gonna
looking
miss
forward
this.
to your analysis because based on what you've told me so far, I think you're going to have a lot of things to say about this, a lot of positive things to say about this movie,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm trying to think of is there any negative things to say? I think it's going to be mostly positive because holy cow, just the the whole wrap up, the whole emotional impact, the whole everything. Uh they did a freaking amazing job. But well, I don't want to get into it. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week. But yeah, thank you guys all so much for hanging out with us. If you guys want to see Michael and myself, feel free to. Hold on, let me press stop streaming.
Oh,
Um, oh,
by the way, we have a survey available.
oh yeah.
Chris and I are in the process of, you know, assessing what we should be doing with the channel in the future. And so we'd really love your feedback and opinions. If you haven't taken the survey already, for those of you who have, thank you so much. Your feedback is very, very helpful. We're getting some interesting results, which,
Mm-mm-mm.
I don't want to share anything with you now because I don't want to taint anybody's opinion going into the
Mm.
survey, but we will eventually, when we're done with it, we'll share with you guys like what the results were and where we're going to go. But it's just a quick little thing. Should only take you like 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 5 tops. And you can kind of just say like, hey, I like it when you guys do these things, or I'm interested in this kind of content. And that'll help us out a lot to figure out where
Yeah.
we're going to go from here. So,
Yeah.
link in the description or in the chat. So yeah, PSA about the survey complete. Thank you.
Thank you guys so and Lido says have a good night guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight,
Yeah, thanks
Lidos.
for being here,
Yeah.
Lidos.
Yeah. Take care. All right. We're gonna sign off. And obviously, if you want to follow me, check me out on twitch.tv Leadzine Studio. And if you want to check Michael out, you can find him here on this channel every Wednesday and Sunday at 7 p.m. PST. And also he has an awesome book out right here. So Blockbuster Blueprint, check it out.
Thanks,
Yeah.
man.
All right. All right. Good night, guys. See you guys Sunday. Take care. Bye. All right.